What do you think is going to happen if the vast majority of American citizens find out that like our government has had UFOs for a very long time? It completely erodes the fabric of religion. It feels to me like the ETs are kind of like checking the pulse, right, of the planet more and more and saying, what's the temperature like? Are these people open to contact or not? And I think the biggest impedance to that is monolithic religion on our planet.
It's kind of like religion, Aaron. Your teachings are threatening their worldview. Well, similar to me, I teach on finance, and so the things that I'm saying threaten the existing structures of how things have been done and thought of. But so far, every single thing that I have said in regards to crypto predictions has played out.
There's the power of unity. There's the power that we, the people, possess. If we can get unified on certain matters, it's game over for the power structure, because the power structure feeds on the collective and what we think and believe.
The pendulum has swung so heavily in the last 12 months, and I don't think we're going to get another opportunity like this for at least many decades. This is that moment that decades from now, we're going to tell stories about.
Welcome back, divine beings, to the Great Awakening Show, where we document the light side of global news and the unfolding story of humanity's Great Awakening. My name is Aaron Abke, and I'm joined by my good friend and powerful co-host, Mr. Jay Griff. How you doing today?
Doing amazing, man. Happy to be here.
Likewise, brother. And today we're bringing you guys our review of the month of May 2024. Now, if you're joining us for the first time on the show, welcome, first of all. Our mission and our vision for this show is to document the story of humanity's evolution in real time as it kind of plays out on the world stage before our very eyes. And, 90% or more of all news headlines in the world are negatively oriented. And so here on this show, we give you the positive side, or the light side, if you will, because we believe that everything that happens in planet Earth is ultimately for humanity's highest good. Even the seeming disasters and challenging events that take place are leading humanity closer to our inevitable awakening. And so that's what we're passionate about talking about on this show, from anything from cultural news, world news, financial news, and anything in between. We believe that the greatest show on earth is happening right now, and almost nobody is truly talking about it, which is why Jeremy and I decided to create this Great Awakening show. So we really strive to bring encouragement and illumination to humanity about the events that are unfolding on our planet, and just to join with all the other awakening souls on this planet to continue moving together towards an awakened world and an enlightened civilization. So we have 3 segments on this show. We have positive news, reaction clips, and bold predictions to close things out. So we'll begin with our first segment today of positive news, and I'll pitch it over to you, Jeremy, for the first clip.
Beautiful. Love your intro, man. That was very nice.
I came well prepared today, bro.
All right. So first reaction clip for you. Did you happen to see this?
I sure did.
What are we seeing here? So we've got World Economic Forum founder Klaus Schwab to retire from leadership role. Was the founder for decades and the face of the WEF, will step away from leadership in the coming months. And then it talks a little bit about the WEF's meetings and all that stuff. I think most of us have probably heard this news, but I wanted to definitely get your takes on any potential theories that you have, or what you think the implications of this are. I believe it said he was 86. So 86.
He also had a recent health emergency, though, didn't he?
I'm not sure. I think I saw something like that.
They kept it really hush-hush, but I saw some clips somebody posted on Instagram that said, like, I don't know if he was boarding a plane and had like a cardiac arrest or something like that. And then it was like a couple weeks later, they announced his retirement. So I think he's on his way out to the 4th density negative. So congrats, brother.
The 4th density negative.
I mean, I'm just calling it like it is, bro. But no,
That's
actually,
the perfect response for Aaron Abke.
that's such an Aaron Apke response, right? What I'm actually thinking of, dude, is the passage where Jesus says, whenever a demon is cast out of someone, he goes and finds 7 more demons more evil than himself and returns back to his original host. Something like that.
Yeah.
And so what I'm thinking is, like, of course, this is positive news in one sense, but like the WEF has no shortage of lizard people who could take over this position. Fourth
Correct.
density negative beings awaiting graduation.
Yep.
I'm thinking that I would imagine they'll probably put I want to say his name is Albert Bourla.
I think
also
they
has
already announced this.
Oh, is my prediction correct? I'm curious now. He has
had
an amazing villain voice like Klaus Schwab does.
The guy who was replacing him is like a younger dude. He had a weird name.
Oh, okay. So they were probably like, we probably shouldn't put another James Bond villain at the head of the WEF because we got a lot of flack for that. And Albert Bourla is definitely another kind of Bond villain archetype. So not surprised with that pick. What's interesting to me from like a public relations standpoint is, do these people really think they can continue, pulling the wool over people's eyes? Like, they have to know that the jig is up as far as the collective consciousness is concerned, because you've got every big podcaster on earth, Joe Rogan, Russell Brand, Glenn Beck. They just showed like everyone calls these people out for being imposters in wolves in sheep's clothing. And I mean, unless they just massively pivot their strategy, like, you guys have been caught. You know what I mean? Like, let's shift to a different disguise maybe. But sometimes, dude, like, the people that run, big power structures like the WEF are just so out of touch with modern society and reality that they don't always really feel the pulse of the collective consciousness. And they'll just be like, they'll keep an old song playing way too long once everyone's already sick of it without like realizing it. So it's something that I've noticed more and more. There was another fiasco that happened with, I want to say it was one of the medical companies recently with the vaccines. You're just like, dude, people give, power structures way too much authority and power and intelligence in their mind. That like, these are unstoppably perfect beings who never make mistakes and know everything and are always 10 steps ahead of you. And it just couldn't be more opposite from the truth. Like, you see that these are absolutely fallible people, just like everyone else. Who cares if they're worshiping Lucifer or not? They're still a person like you and I, who can make mistakes and have bad judgment calls. And it happens all the time where they expose themselves accidentally. Of course, we have like the hush money trial being one example of that. Just what an abject disaster that whole psyop was for them. These things happen more often than we pay attention to, but too many people are too busy outsourcing all of their power and fear to these power structures, when in fact, like, there's a huge collapse happening at that level.
That's a great point. I wanted to highlight this part. I thought it was funny. The WEF maintains that it provides a global, impartial, and not-for-profit platform for meaningful connection between stakeholders to establish trust and build initiatives for cooperation and progress. And then it says its mission, it says, is improving the state of the world.
Doesn't say for who though, right?
Let's check this part out also. This is good. After he called the first Davos summit following COVID-19 pandemic shutdowns as the Great Reset, conspiracy theorists charged he was the incarnation of a globalized elite seeking to enslave and even eliminate portions of humanity.
Nice. See, they're coming right out with it because they know they can't ignore it anymore.
Yeah, that's funny when you see. I mean, this is like some France outlet, but still funny to see.
Am I tripping, or was that a contradiction of terms there, where it said not for profit and something for stakeholders?
Correct. Yeah.
How do you
that
have
was why I just kind of glanced over that, but that's funny to me for a million reasons. Like, if you understand the trust game,
yeah,
and then the public versus private, like, obviously they're like, okay, they're probably a 501c3 or something like that. But then the reality of it is, like, they're getting a bunch of rich people together. You know that it's all financially motivated, and what's going on behind closed doors is a little bit different.
Yeah, you always have to read between the lines with these kind of things.
Yeah. Anyway, I'll take that. I thought it was good to share. I figure our audience is happy about that from Mr. Crickets. But like you said, the replacement, I mean, it's more about the WEF itself, like you brought up, but at the same time, like you also brought up, everyone is like, that's become the most low-hanging fruit. Like if you think about, I think we were talking about in our last show, like pointing out how, we can take for granted like how fast humanity is awakening the last few years, and like you normalize it because it's, just happens on a day-to-day, week-to-week, and then you kind of forget what life was like a few months ago. But it was not very long ago where like it was super conspiratorial to talk about the WEF. Like in 2020, 2021, it was like, oh, come on. If you brought up the WEF, then you were automatically like an anti-vaxxer. And then now it's like any podcast, even mainstream entities are like, yeah, no. So
well, you have the world's wealthiest human being that we know of, Elon Musk, constantly publicly calling them out for being exactly what they are. And so they have to like go at Elon in the headlines. Oh, it's a conspiracy theory. But no, Klaus Schwab literally called it the Great Reset. And many of the WEF members have called it the Great Reset. They just painted it like this positive thing where, hey, we're going to have all these amazing smart cities. It'll be a great reset for humanity, blah, blah, blah. And then when people started using that as a negative term, they were like, oh, that's a conspiracy theory. It's always the prime tactic of the negative polarity is when you catch them in their, deceit and trickery, they try to paint you like you're crazy for assuming that somebody would scheme and conspire for the harm of others. Oh, that's crazy. You think anyone would do something that evil? And that's, we use the analogy of the flak. You get flak when you're over the target in military, when airplanes are flying and they start getting shot at. In military, they understand like that always means you're near where the enemy doesn't want you to be. And so the conspiracy theory label is like the biggest flak the negative polarity has been using for the last, 5 or 6 years to keep people away from the targets. They don't want us targeting.
So quick definition of reset. In Scottish law, reset refers to two things. Firstly, it is the act of knowingly receiving stolen goods. This means that if someone buys or accepts something that they have known has been stolen, they are committing reset. And think about it, the Great Reset.
Oh, you mean like money? Like all money?
Yeah. And then it can also mean harboring or sheltering a criminal or outlaw. And then the person who commits a reset is called a resetter. So that's probably Schwab's nickname, the resetter. But I just thought, like, isn't that crazy?
That's crazy.
Because like where like all of our legal system and our words and stuff comes from like England and Britain and the Crown and all that stuff. So it's like you often have to trace words back because they're usually most of our system isn't American.
Yeah, all of it's been borrowed from prior systems and countries. That is fascinating.
Yep. Thought our audience would appreciate marinating on that one. Gives you
it's always the word magic, man.
Yeah, it's always the word magic. We haven't really done much of that on our show, but it'd be cool sometime to go into some etymology.
For sure. Because, I mean, it's part of the way that they karmically absolve themselves, I think, the negative polarity, is that if they're going to use words that have specific meanings that they know the average person doesn't know and would never think to look up. When you hear the Great Reset, you think, I know what reset means. The average person does. Because the average person doesn't understand that the whole world is run by word magic. All these words we use, even like police, like all these words have completely different definitions under the law than common colloquial vernacular would lend itself to. So you've got to look up what these words mean in law dictionaries to actually know. And when you do, you start tumbling down that rabbit hole pretty quick. So when they say the Great Reset and they try to paint it like a positive thing, oh, isn't the world awful right now? Don't we have so many problems? Yes, we agree. Let's do a Great Reset. Yes, 2030, the Great Reset. That'll be great. It'll be awesome. And they want people to say, oh, nice, we'll take a reset. And what we don't know we're agreeing to is the acquisition of stolen goods, right? Which is all the money, all the currency being fake, number one, and stolen from the American people without us knowing about it. It's kind of like, do you consent to us stealing your goods and we can reset on that basis?
So while we're on this topic of etymology real quick, before I pass it over to you, I wanted to show our audience this for those who haven't dove down, the rabbit holes of, basic etymology and starting to look at words differently. So everyone who's, watching the show is going to be familiar with the word government, but how many of us have ever stopped to take a moment to ask ourselves, what does that actually mean? Most of us have been taught that govern means a specific thing, and so we just figure, okay, government means that's the action of them doing that. But when we look at the etymology, let's check this out. So, of course, you get your to direct, to rule, to guide, to govern. That's how most people think of it. But there's also some other options here where it talks about to steer or pilot a ship directly as a pilot. And that's govern. And then when we look at ment, which is a little harder to find, you have to go for the Latin definitions. The mind, or plan, intention, or frame of mind. So let's kind of say this a few different ways. To steer or pilot the ship of one's mind, or we could say it like to pilot a ship of one's frame of mind. We could also talk about potentially to steer or to pilot one's reason, one's intellect, or one's judgment. So we start looking at like, what is the government actually? And you quickly get into a conversation of, is the purpose of government to provide, safety and national security and law and order, or is it to govern the minds of the populace? And whether you use the mind definition, I even think this one is amazing as well, because essentially what government means is to govern or steer the intellect of a body of people, or to govern their judgment. And if you think about what the government attempts to do in its entirety, you can be the judge of if you feel that definition's fitting. But I wanted to drop that for the people. So having said all that, I'm going to pass it over to you now for your piece of positive news for the month. What you got?
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, if government means to rule the mind, then if that definition etymologically is true, then that means the government's real function is to serve as a kind of propaganda machine to steer the minds of the public in the direction the government wants. And the front the government puts on is what you said, of an institution here to create law and order and a harmonious society. But that's not what the definition of the word actually means. And that's also part of steering the mind, right? We're telling you we're one thing. We want you to think this. We're the good guys. We're on your team. That even that is steering the mind, right? Don't look at what they say. Look at what they actually do. Hundreds of billions of dollars to proxy wars, forcing taxation on people without representation. We added 87,000 IRS agents, and Biden just proposed a new law to create, to make it a felony not to file taxes. Because I think something like 30 million people don't file taxes. So he's going to make it 30 million Americans felons if that bill passes. So it's like, is that creating a harmonious, safe society? Like, obviously, reality would tell us no. But nevertheless, we're told that's what the government is. And a lot of people still think the government works for the people. That's steering the mind, isn't it? Look over here, not at reality. So, yeah. For my positive news clip, I pulled out the conversation of the month because last month we talked about Billy Carson being on the Andrew Schultz podcast, Tucker Carlson being on Rogan, and just going deep on extraterrestrials, ancient civilizations, advanced technologies. And we were sort of saying like, wow, this is such a great sign for humanity that spiritual influencers, teachers, thought leaders are making their way into the podcasting space, the mainstream podcasting space, especially through the niche of stand-up comics. So we had another one this month that really broke the internet. I know everyone knows what conversation I'm talking about, which was Terrance Howard on Joe Rogan. And I just wanted to play this clip here, which I thought was amazing to hear someone say this on Joe Rogan. Like, this is what I would say if I was on Joe Rogan and I had this opportunity to speak to 20 million people. And Terrance Howard just totally nails it.
Like Rupert Sheldrake says, the physicists of today ask for, you give us one miracle and, show us how everything came from nothing and we'll explain everything else. And they can't explain everything else. They can't explain the morphic resonance that's happening between things. Like right now, because I've discovered these wave conjugations, every person on the planet that's been thinking about it will now have ideas concerning, but not just us, but all humanoids throughout the entire universe will now get that same resonance and be able to apply it like the experiments with the rats.
Right.
You teach a rat something here in London, and then in New York you find the rats are doing the same thing.
Right.
Spontaneously because of the morphic resonance, because we are all connected on this ether, and that waveform that's the consciousness. We are all just one great being.
Yeah.
That's what they forget. We're not separate. The universe is probably one cell inside of some super organism.
Right.
And we're just little who, little who's like Horton hears a who and trying to make sense of it. And it's a beautiful thing that we're making sense of it. But everything is just one great being. We're all God. That's what Jesus was talking about. That's what Buddha was talking about. It's recognizing the divinity in you. What I did as a child, I said, I'm going to, instead of waiting for the Messiah to show up, what if everybody picked up their torture stake and behaved and did the things that they had expected the Messiah to do? What if everybody just for one day walked around and behaved as if they were God himself and did the things that they would expect the Creator? And we know God can't just be a male, because no man could produce a child without a female. Everything in the universe, as above, so below, like Billy Carson always talks about. You can't, everything has an equal and opposite.
Did he just shout out Billy Carson?
He did, yeah.
That's funny to think that Terrance Howard's watching Billy Carson.
I know, right?
It's like the worlds are merging.
It's a match made in heaven, actually.
Man, that was one of my favorite parts of the whole episode. So it's super dope that you chose that as well. Just that notion of, I know this is like very much the nature of your work, right? So I'm sure you feeling some type of way watching that, but it is exactly what you would say if you went on there. In my community, we've been talking about it since the day it dropped, and some people have differing opinions, feeling that he's a psyop or a plant.
Of course.
And I don't know if you've come across that information of supposedly his degrees are fake and blah, blah, blah. But personally, like, I'm of the same stance that we've talked about when we start talking about Trump or Robert Kennedy, and people try to like cancel us. Like, people will comment, Aaron Abke, you were my favorite spiritual teacher until you supported this misogynist unsubscribed. And it's like, the point is not any of that. It's just that we're documenting the awakening. And even if he is a psyop, even if he is a plant, like, he just went on Joe Rogan and blew 20 million people's minds about some information that isn't fake. So we get so caught up on the deliverer of the message that we forget that the deliverer doesn't even really matter. Because from the quantum, like he's talking about, we're all the same person. And we want to like instantly shift into duality and be like personal attacks, which I believe is called like ad hominem or whatever.
Yeah.
Like when you can't pick apart what someone is saying, you just attack them. And it's like, I don't really care. Like I don't need to really like research or any of that. I'm looking at how does my body feel when he's talking, and then I'm looking at like, does the information check out and all of that. So some of the stuff that he went into, right, like his IQ is up there, and he might be borderline on the spectrum a little bit. My man's talking about some stuff that most, like reading the comment section was funny, because most people are like, what the hell am I listening to? Like, they couldn't fathom. But that's what's epic about the times that we're in right now. Like, we've got so many things coinciding, right? The recurring conversations we're having around how big of a year this is, with the financial systems, mass awakening, the mainstream media. Then you have things like this, where it's like, man, this could have never happened even like a year ago or 18 months ago. So it's fascinating to see. I really liked the stuff about the periodic table and everything, how he was getting into
that
like
was the coolest, man.
The sacred geometry stuff of the spirals. Obviously the way he was explaining it was a little like, most of us couldn't really track or like fact check what he's saying. But once again, to me, that wasn't the point of the episode. The point of the episode was like, you just have Rogan's getting more views on a given episode than all of the mainstream outlets at their nightly news combined. And you just had someone come on who a lot of people look up to or idolize because he's famous and successful. And he just came on there and melted people's perception of reality.
Yeah.
I mean, he just took their worldview and he just turned it upside down and then was like, that's all for today. Like, what? Like, no one knew he was into that shit. So that's like, since that episode, my Twitter feed, I've had people DMing me it. Like, it's spreading. So I think he accomplished what he was going for. And I think it's amazing that, he brought up his interpretation of the point of Jesus and the biblical teachings and stuff, which I know you've been on a big crusade, no pun intended, regarding that stuff lately, which is amazing, because that's, once again, that message gets lost in people trying to figure out, like, was it real or was it fake? Was it literal or not? And it's like, you can miss the message.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what he was really getting at.
Yeah. The people that rise to fame and notoriety in society are a stigmatism or an example or a reflection of the collective consciousness itself, meaning we don't listen to people that we don't like or don't look up to or idolize in some way. Somebody who's getting, I think, 6-7 million views now on that podcast. If that many people are wanting to listen to somebody, that's a reflection of where the collective is at, meaning at least people are interested in this information, which is a massive positive for humanity's awakening. It's, like the alternative to this, as you said, is like mainstream news, where you're going to hear people with Trump derangement syndrome talking about the latest Trump news cycle, just garbage for your brain, not benefiting humanity in any way at all. And instead, you don't have that anymore. You have the death of mainstream media as we know it. Our children will probably never know what that is. We'll have to explain to them. At one point, there was these corporations who did the news on TV and the government paid them to tell what the government wanted. Like, no way, that's crazy. Like, yeah, it was before podcast.
Oh, that's crazy.
It'll be archaic, very soon. And what has replaced it? These kinds of conversations. Dude, could we get a bigger win than that? I don't know if we could, because that's, again, a reflection of what people are interested in. And if you noticed, Rogan, when he was talking about there's only one great being in the universe, we're all one consciousness, Rogan was really leaning into what he was saying. And I think it was kind of a subconscious vocal thing where he was like, yeah, a couple of times. Right when Terrance says we're all one great being, Rogan's like, yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a little tell that in Rogan's mind, like, I think he believes that too. I think he agrees with that. He's done way too many psychedelics not to know that, I think.
Oh, yeah.
But he has to keep that close to the vest, and he doesn't want to be stigmatized and stuff. But the reason I thought that was such positive news is because we just talked about this last month, and then we have another nuclear bomb podcast with another high-level spiritual thought leader who, he really has pioneered the work of Walter Russell, who I'm a big fan of as well, and I've studied his work quite a bit. The Secret of Light, The Divine Iliad, The Universal One, all three incredible books from Walter Russell, who was very much like a Nikola Tesla kind of figure who was extremely advanced in his understanding of metaphysics. And it's funny you mentioned, like, people will mock Terrance Howard and you read the comment section and it's like, oh, this guy's lost his mind. What a Looney Tune. Oh, I can't believe he's gone off his rocker. But you don't see anybody argue, not that I've seen at least, I haven't seen one person try to argue against his breakdown of the periodic table and the way the elements match, the wave conjugations. He went through Saturn's electromagnetic field and showed the hexagon on top of Saturn and how you create that through waveforms and wave patterns. And like, nobody tries to say, oh, this is garbage. Let me disprove this right now. I haven't seen any YouTube videos about that. I've just seen like takedown videos of, look at this kooky guy who thinks he's the smartest person ever.
I know.
And a lot of Terrance's work is not his own work. It's Walter Russell's work and some other earlier pioneers like Tesla, who he's kind of taken their work and added to it a bit or explained it in a way that hasn't been explained before. And some of it's original as well to him. But Walter Russell really understood this equal opposite interchange of energy, positive, negative polarities that creates the whole universe. And Albert Einstein actually famously said that he wished he had studied more of Walter Russell's work.
Mm-hmm.
And if that doesn't tell you how advanced and next level Walter Russell's work was, nothing will, because Albert Einstein is widely considered to be like the most intelligent man who's ever lived. And so the reason that nobody's taking down Terrance Howard's actual claims is because they're based off of people like Walter Russell and Nikola Tesla, who their work has been around for almost 100 years now, and nobody has been able to debunk it because it's based on metaphysics. But if you don't understand the basic principles and laws of metaphysics, the nature of energy and consciousness, then you'll listen to somebody like Terrance Howard and think he sounds like a kook.
Yeah.
But for those of us who are tapped into metaphysics and understand the laws of energy, we listen and go, of course, that's definitely the way it works. No doubt about it. So it's cool. It's cool contrast.
What about this part, dude? He casually just dropped that linchpin thing, the 8-sided flying device.
Crazy, right?
Did you see that part? Like, what?
He's got like 97 patents, dude.
Yeah, the stuff that he talked about with the patents was insane. But this personally, when he started showing the device that he made that's like defies gravity, I think he was talking about it creates its own gravity or something. Or it's
I
like,
think so.
The way he was describing it sounds similar to how I think we've theorized, like, haven't we talked about, like, I think I've asked you before, like, how do you think alien crafts are like moving how they're moving, like how they can just change on a dime? Like, what he created is literally something that could do something similar. Obviously, if it works, I don't have any context of that, but just when he casually was bringing up these videos and pictures, I'm just like,
yeah,
what?
Dude, he also casually brought up that he had the first original patent on, I want to say it was either augmented reality or virtual reality. Yeah. And he showed it, and he showed all the companies that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I mean, how do you argue with that?
I know. Yeah. So to go off your point in regards to like people just really attacking him instead of the information, my Twitter has been that's really where I stay in touch with things. I don't consume any semblance of news. I just follow people who I know have good intentions and who do good research.
Mm-hmm.
And in a variety of areas. So there's been a lot on my timeline and different threads of people like posting a brief summary and then I've seen a number of them tagging like this like insanely bright physicist and being like, can you comment on this? Or like stuff like that. And like I've even seen one or two of them do like a reaction response of like, here's my thoughts. A lot of you have been asking me. And basically like the ones I read, like they're like, I'm unable to speak to, like, I don't have anything to refute what he's saying. Like they basically said like, I can't say, you know how like scientists are. They're like, I can't say like with certainty that it's true, but I definitely can't say with certainty that it's not. And so he's like, based on everything that he shared.
That's huge. That's really huge.
Yeah. So it's the type of thing where it's like, I think he was saying he wanted to debate, what's
Neil
Homeboy's
deGrasse Tyson.
name who's like bought out.
Neil
deGrasse
Tyson.
Yeah. And like crickets.
I would love to see that debate.
Crickets. That would be cool to see for sure.
I mean, Terrance is definitely right about the fact that there are no straight lines in the universe.
Yeah.
What appears to be a straight line when you zoom in close enough has edges and waves. You know, everything has curves to it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fact. I also think it's interesting. He says there's no such thing as zero in the universe. I wonder how he would describe a neutral charge. Like an atom may have an equal balance of 3 positive, 3 negative particles in it, and that creates a neutral charge. Wouldn't that be a 0, or would that be like a 3 plus 3 or 3 minus 3?
Yeah.
But he basically says it actually goes from 1 to -1. There's no such thing as 0 in the universe. And it's like, it's an interesting point to consider.
Yeah. We would have to rethink like mathematics, science, like every field.
Yeah. And the square root of 2 is the craziest one to me. That 1 times 1 equals 2. Like on its face, it makes sense that to multiply something means it increases in value. So 1 times 1 equals 1 is not a multiple. It's not a multiplication. And he shows how when you cube the square root of 2, it goes up to this number. You divide it by 2, it goes back down to the original number. That doesn't make any sense. Cubing and dividing by 2 equals out. So we've got something off here in our math. And he said all of quantum physics is based on the square root of 2. So it's exciting to me because what it might mean is that if we can have enough mathematicians, physicists look at this and confirm it and say, you know what, there's actually some credence to this, then that could upend all of quantum physics as we know it and lead us to a whole new frontier of scientific discovery. So it's great that you have people like him pushing the needle, because you have to be somewhat of a martyr to do that. It doesn't matter what you say on the internet. Like, I go on podcasts all the time that'll get, 500,000 views or something, and 40% of the comments are like super harsh and negative. And it's just something you accept as this is part of the collective consciousness. Is a lot of people just like to be negative. They get on the internet every day looking for something to shit on and to be negative about.
Yeah.
Because that's where their state of being normally is. And so you have to like understand that comes with the territory. But if you're going to be progressing humanity in the right direction, you have to be willing to kind of be publicly crucified like that. And so I appreciate Terrance Howard for that, because I know that he understands the game he's playing in the society he's in. And he's just like, I don't care, man. I'm here to speak truth, and I'm going to do it as long as I'm on this earth.
I have a hard time believing 40% of any comment section is being negative to you.
I'll send you a link later today, bro.
Hey, you gotta be in a fucking dark place to.
Well, what's funny is, so I did Andre DeComb's podcast on the Essenes last month, and it got a lot of traction.
Podcast, by the way, that was phenomenal breakdown.
It was a blast, man. It was like probably my favorite podcast I've done thus far. And
Your
I posted a
theology
clip.
is like next level. I don't think a lot of the internet, even myself, is like used to that or as aware as we could be of your background in theology. So it's cool when you just go in.
Yeah, thank you, man. It's a huge passion, and I don't get to talk about it as much as I'd like to probably. But it's the same exact case as with Terrance Howard, in that when you look at the comment section, like I posted a clip on my channel of the conversation about how like Paul the apostle stole the gospel from Jesus, completely altered it to basically the opposite of Jesus's gospel. And I can prove this, and I do prove it on the podcast. And you get it hit the Christian airwaves somewhere because I looked at the comments one day, and there was like 500 comments or something.
Wow.
And I was scrolling through, and like every single comment I read for like 5 minutes straight was just like super angry Christians, coming at me.
Their stances, yeah.
Yeah, and again, just like Terrance Howard, like not one person actually is going after the facts I'm laying out.
Yeah.
The biblical history or the etymology. They're just like, you're dumb, I hate your earrings, you're a heretic, et cetera, like ad hominem stuff. And I think that's, again, a sign that when someone's in an emotional argument, it means that you are altering their perception of reality, and their ego doesn't like it.
You're threatening it.
Yeah, and so it's going to come after you for that.
Yeah. I mean, that's a whole other rabbit hole, but all I would say on that is I don't know that, I'll say we humans, I don't think we adopt religious worldviews or participate in religion because we're searching for the truth. I don't know that that's necessarily the case.
It's not the whole case, for sure.
And
a lot of it is a search for comfort and certainty.
Yeah. And there's a lot of value in that, societally and individually.
Mm-hmm.
But truth is extremely threatening. Like, you study the biggest truthers throughout history to make light of it. They would never have been called that, right? They would have been called like heretics or whatever, but they were pretty much always killed.
It's facts, dude.
Like, they either had their life's work destroyed and they were like, ran out of town, or they were killed, crucified, burned at the stake.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's all fun and games, like even in the spiritual space, to talk about like we're all here, to spread truth. But it's like the longer I live, the more I'm like, no, we're not. We're not. Let's just be honest. Like, let's have a real conversation. Like, I'm comfortable in my beliefs, and I'd prefer to stay here. I can respect that.
Yeah,
but
if you're honest about it.
Yeah. But I don't think that that's the conversation that most of us are having.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you look back at history, you have the Galileos, the Copernicus, the Giordano Bruno, Miguel Molinos, Joan of Arc, people now that we praise and laud for being forerunners and enlightened beings and all that. And when they were actually on the planet, we thought they were the worst people among us, and we burned them alive and chopped their heads off. Mm-hmm. And then in retrospect, we're like, oops, they were actually super legit. Mm-hmm. This is just what happened. It's what always has happened. They crucified Jesus, for crying out loud. Mm-hmm. If you're going to speak truth, especially truth to power, you're going to be crucified in some way for it. And these days, crucifixion is now just in the comment section on a YouTube video, cancel culture, shame culture. You're going to get crucified socially, not actually physically. So, hey, that's good. We're evolving,
Yeah.
but we're still crucifying our saviors, right? Which is the problem.
Yeah. Good way to put it. All right. So now we're going to move on to the next section of our show, which is going to be our reaction videos, reaction clips. So I'll go ahead and start us off. So it's been a massive month for, you knew this was coming up?
I was hoping you were going to talk about this.
It's been a massive month for crypto. I imagine you already know that and have been tapped in with it. But for much of our audience, I think that first time we did the BlackRock episode was kind of a lot of people's like wake up call. And probably first time, like based on the comments and a lot of DMs that I got, like that was people's like, okay, like I'm paying attention to this now. And since then, like things have just been escalating like faster and faster, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we had the Ethereum ETFs approved on May 23rd. So at the time that this will come out, that's just a little over a week ago. And so to kind of read through some of this, the SEC approved the sale of a spot Ethereum exchange traded funds, ETFs, in the United States on May 23rd. The SEC combined proposals from the NASDAQ, New York Stock Exchange, and CBOE exchanges, which requested changes to the existing rules to allow the trading of Ethereum exchange. Look, typo
product.
In Forbes, exchange traded products and ETFs. This is the SEC's second decision regarding regarding crypto exchange traded products. Earlier this year, January 2024, which we did an amazing episode on, when that happened, the SEC, after a long battle, approved Bitcoin ETFs. The exchanges had sought SEC approval for a rule change required to list these new products, which was successfully granted. And then the only caveat for people to understand, so you can't currently go, at least at the time that this is being recorded, you can't go search Ethereum ETF and buy anything yet because something called, I believe it's called an S1 still has to be approved. So in other words, the legality and the foundation and the general like policy has been approved, but the actual entities and how they're going to be like listed and put on exchanges, that process hasn't been approved yet. So basically, like the way I would interpret that is the progress has been made in terms of getting over the massive hill of the SEC has been basically like steel manning and really putting their foot down in terms of like, okay, Bitcoin is a commodity, but everything else is a security. And so you have, a lot of these pro Bitcoin camps and just general people who have been saying for the longest time, they're not going to approve an Ethereum ETF. They're not going to approve an Ethereum ETF. It's only going to be Bitcoin. And
just a few months later,
I've been very vocal that they're going to approve an Ethereum ETF. And not just that, but that the Ethereum ETF, just this is part of what I want to talk about today. It represents something a lot bigger than just the Ethereum ETF. So I'll kind of talk about that for a quick second, and then I want to get your thoughts. But this is a pivotal moment in, I'll call it like economic history.
Mm-hmm.
So I've talked about this notion before on the show where we've been waiting years for crypto to reach the point that it became too big to fail. It needed to kind of hit that tipping point. And there's been a few key moments in the trajectory of crypto since its inception, since the very first creation of Bitcoin and the white paper and everything, that have been those really big moments. And this year we've had multiple of them.
Yeah.
So later in this episode, I'm going to talk about the FIT 21 bill that got passed in regards to changing the policy around what is classified as a security and what is not. And the reason that that's important in the crypto space is because the SEC has been standing behind this argument of all of these assets except Bitcoin are securities, and therefore we cannot allow the public to buy them because they're risky and it's in their best interest for us to protect them from them. But that's really just been a fancy way of saying like, okay, fine, like you guys wore us down on Bitcoin plus the big dogs, right? The BlackRocks and all of the powers that be that really run shit want the Bitcoin ETF, but maybe they don't so much care about these other ones. So we're not going to go out of our way to make these things something that's readily available. So really what this Ethereum ETF represents isn't so much like, it's not that everyone needs to buy and hold Ethereum. I personally do, but you don't need to. That's not necessarily the point. The point is like this represents the first like policy shift where now the floodgates are open. Because what had to happen before this could be passed, which I'll talk about in a bit when we get to the FIT 21 bill, but they had to redefine crypto because they haven't understood it. They weren't taking it seriously for years. They were demonizing it and trying to ensure that it didn't happen. And then what happened? Well, during COVID and everything like that, fourth turning, all the division, the wealth inequality, the issues with inflation and the government, more and more people have adopted it. And it's become too big for them to shut us up. There's 50 million Americans or more that currently hold some form of cryptocurrency. 50 million.
Wow.
Yeah, that's 1/6 of America. And so that's massive. Yet less than 10% of the world holds it. But America, that's pretty crazy. And so what, in my opinion, has kind of happened is we've entered this realm where it's the genie's out of the bottle. And we saw that, like I said, on that Bitcoin ETF episode, that was a key moment where, when BlackRock and State Street and Fidelity and all the big dogs are piling in, and then you have JP Morgan Chase and all the regular banks are able to buy through these entities as well. You already know it's good. It's here to stay. Like that level of risk goes way down now, right? Because you have institutional adoption. But now with the Ethereum ETF, this is a game changer because the Bitcoin adoption secured Bitcoin's future. But anyone who's actually versed in crypto knows that there's Bitcoin and then there's everything else. Bitcoin is not the same thing at all as the rest of the cryptocurrencies. It's almost like an alien technology, if you will. It isn't the same thing. The first principles that operate it and the way that it actually works is not the same thing as everything else. And so the fact that we finally have the Ethereum ETFs approved means that there's really not much that has to happen further before crypto as it's in its entirety as an asset class is adopted and integrated. Last time we talked about Stripe and I brought up some of the different payment options. Like I think I showed like Solana was going to be an option to start out. Ethereum and I forget, I think a USDC or something, Tether.
Yeah.
One of those. But like from here, it's not going to be much further to where now all of the rest of crypto is going to get a lot of shine on it. If you've noticed this cycle thus far in crypto, Bitcoin's been on an insane run, and it's been different from any other cycle because normally Bitcoin underperforms the rest of the altcoins because they're way smaller market cap, less liquidity, right? So they're going to rise faster. This is the first bull run since the inception of crypto that Bitcoin has outperformed most of the other altcoin classes.
Interesting.
And the reason for that is because this is a once in a lifetime thing where we went from only retail adoption of crypto to institutional adoption. And that they only did that in Bitcoin so far. So of course, Bitcoin has been pumping. They're constantly making buys on a daily basis that are going to accelerate and prop up the price action. Whereas for the Ethereums, for the Solanas, for the layer ones, for the AI coins, gaming coin, all privacy coins, all the different realms of altcoins, you're not having institutional adoption buying that at scale yet. And so that's what this signifies to me. It signifies the world putting some respect on crypto's name, if you will, outside of just Bitcoin. And for a lot of people who aren't like me and you, Aaron, like first movers, they need that. They need to wait and see that something is like acceptable or safe or there's policy and rules in place, right? Some of us don't like rules. We don't follow them. But the majority of humanity needs rules. So that's, this is massive. I'll be talking more about the crypto stuff today, but I want to give you a chance to share your thoughts.
Well, I might actually just go right into my clip because it pertains to this exact topic. So we had the Libertarian Convention this last week, and you saw Donald Trump went to that to speak at that. was pretty interesting to say the least.
I didn't see anything from it. But
Oh, okay. There's this amazing clip where he's like, I think the Libertarian Party should nominate Donald J. Trump for president. And everyone's like, boo. And he's like, unless you want to keep losing. He's like, then you can have your 3% every 4 years. You keep on losing.
Of him getting booed, and then he was saying, unless you want to keep losing.
So classic Trump. He's like, you guys should nominate me. And they're like, boo. He's like, you're a bunch of losers. That's all you'll ever be. Gotta love Trump, man. What an ego that guy has.
Yeah.
So he did this interview with Tim Pool at the Libertarian Convention. I think this was actually right before he went on stage and that exact thing happened. But, this was huge for me to see him say this, because this is, as far as we know, the obvious incumbent president, unless they figure out a way to steal the election again. He's probably going to be the president. And listen to what he says when Tim Pool asks him if he would adopt cryptocurrency as president.
You announced you're taking cryptocurrency.
What we're doing is we're backing it as a field, and we have to, because otherwise somebody else is going to be doing it from another country. And as you know, they're already trying, and it's going to happen, and we're going to help it happen. And it's something that can be very good. I think it can be very good.
No central bank digital currencies.
No no central bank.
And one more big one.
So, I mean, that's huge, right? Like, you have the incoming president saying, I will adopt cryptocurrency because we have to, because if we don't, everyone else will. I mean, that goes to what you were saying about it's too late now. The floodgates have cracked open. And like, your prediction about them starting an ETF for Ethereum, I would imagine your prediction was backed by the understanding that it's not a matter of if or when, like they have to do it. It's their arms being bent behind their back. They're screaming uncle, like they have no choice at this point, because it's the new gold rush, right? If they don't do it, all their competitors are going to do it and are doing it, and they're rushing to the gold first. And so, although again, the negative polarity will work together for a common goal, if one of them breaks the line to get ahead, like that's going to trigger the rest of them to do the same. And so that's why Ra says in the Law of One, the negative polarity is always breaking down. They'll build up some kind of order structure and it'll break down quickly, because there's always the fight for power in the negative polarity. So they can't have a cohesive structure of anything for very long. And so that's why ideas like crypto to me are genius designs for creating a new earth, because anything that's decentralized has that effect on negatively polarized power structures, that because they can't manipulate it like they do with their own currencies, then there's going to be this eventual breaking down of the power structure to rush in to grab the power that's available, and then they're all fighting each other again. And that's what humanity needs right now, is to get some of these huge power structures to start crumbling on our planet so we can start building new systems in their place. And I think this year we're seeing huge cracks in the foundation of our financial system. And I mean, at the end of that clip, he also said, no central bank digital currency on my watch.
Yep.
And so, like, if he gets elected president and he says, no digital currency, it's not happening, here's why, like, that could potentially be a dead in the water kind of thing for the central banks, in that once you have a president openly reject something and explain why it's not good for the country, like, that's probably your only shot, being thrown down the toilet now, because all these strategies and psyops that they do rely on sleight of hand, sneaking things in, hush, hush, don't talk about it too much till we get it in. And they tried to do that. They've been trying to do that with the central bank digital currency on the back of the crypto wave we're talking about. And people have caught on to it thanks to the internet and started talking about, hey, if the central bank comes out with a digital currency, no way am I taking that thing. And now you have bigger podcasters who talk about it. And now you have finally the incoming president saying, absolutely not.
Yep.
And so I'm like, dude, see what I mean? Like, the planet is awakening so fast in so many little ways that it's easy to not appreciate it when it's happening. Because just 2 years ago, everyone in the truther movement was losing their mind over this new idea of a central bank digital currency. Yeah. And they're like, we're screwed. They're gonna own everything. They're gonna take all the crypto for themselves because it's gonna come through digital currency. We're all gonna be forced to take it. We're screwed. And then look, 2 years later, it's dead in the water. This is how fast things can shift on an awakening planet like ours.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of that, these same type of people you're describing, and maybe some of our audience doesn't want to hear this, but a lot of that is because of technology and the internet. So the same thing that we're referring to as the Antichrist and the downfall of the consciousness of humanity, which is often blamed on technology, our phones, social media, the internet.
Yep.
In no world is what you just described possible without this decentralized spread of mass information.
100%.
So it's like we want to demonize these things of like, oh, we're always scrolling on our phone and we're lonelier than ever and mental health. And it's like, sure, but there is a shadow and a light side to everything. And at the same time, we also have access to information that we've never had in any point in history ever. And we also have the downfall of the mainstream media. That's because of social media and all of these things where we're all able to be our own news show like this or our own independent journalist or whatever it may be, right? Like everyone with a phone is now a journalist in a way.
Yeah.
We all have a voice. And so, there's pros and cons to everything. And I'm glad you brought up that clip. I didn't think you were going to bring up anything crypto related, but that's directly tied into a lot of what I'm going to be talking about. Because if you remember, I've been saying that for many episodes now about how the election, this was going to be our first election where the presidents were going to be pumping our bags. And it was going to be a main talking point of like, it's hard to imagine, but we've never had a presidential debate where there was any conversation of a currency.
Mm-hmm.
Not in any of our lifetimes, not that I'm aware of, right? Of like, let's discuss the implications of this new form of currency and have that as a main polling point, voting point, and debate point. Like, in other words, they have their buckets like abortion, and then they have their buckets on like LGBTQ, and then they have their buckets on taxes, and they have their main buckets, right? And then people are just like, okay, I agree, I don't, okay, I'm going to vote for that guy. Like, that's pretty much how simple it is for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
A bucket is now going to be cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, there are 50 million Americans who now own some semblance of cryptocurrency, which means there's even more than that who care to potentially own it soon or care about the future of it. So that is a massive amount. And that's why you see Trump, who is a businessman, doing what he needs to do and saying what he needs to say to get elected. And he's exactly right. I've talked about this before, but our policies since we have been under Biden, and I don't say this from a political perspective, I'm a capitalist and an entrepreneur and an investor. Our policies have stifled innovation. It has drove out wealth from our country. So not only are we allowing people into our country to compete and take wealth from the average person, but we're also driving wealth out of our country. That happens through tax laws. It happens through tariff laws. It happens sometimes through immigration laws, through living standards and all that. But more so than anything, it's the policies that have been adopted. Our stances on AI, on disruptive innovation, on cryptocurrency they literally tell entrepreneurs, go screw yourself. We don't support you. We don't welcome you here. So you have people going to places like El Salvador. You have people going to places like Costa Rica. You have people going to some of these places where they're a bit more crypto friendly. And then now they're going to build something over there or whatever. Whereas if our policies were a lot more pro-innovation, that would happen here. And so Trump, being a businessman, understands that the way to improve the GDP of America, the way to create more prosperity and job opportunity and abundance is by creating policy that encourages innovation. So it comes back to game theory. Trump understands that if we don't do this, our enemies, that's how he sees the world, our enemies will. So our enemies will win if we don't do this. So we're going to do it. Whereas like Biden and them, they don't seem to care about that. So it's going to be an interesting election where you got Kennedy pro crypto, Trump pro crypto, and then you got Biden, who's been adamantly anti crypto. I don't know if you saw this, but Trump announced that he was accepting donations in crypto to his campaign, and within hours, Biden came out with a what do you call it, like a press announcement or whatever. That they love crypto and that they're accepting it to their party. And it's like, that's what I'm talking about. That's the game theory. And that's what people don't understand when, I have a lot of like doubters and and naysayers who always try to use like logic with me when I give predictions and stuff, whether it be my students or in the comments and stuff like that. And all I say to that is like, I think a lot of us make the fallacy of thinking that humans are logical and therefore thinking that markets are logical, and they're not. All of this is just human behavior, and a lot of it can be explained by game theory. So it's not logical what just happened with the Ethereum ETF. It's not logical what happened with the Bitcoin ETF. You don't just have like the power structures that be literally drawing a line in the sand and being like, we will not pass this. Like Gary Gensler was literally willing to die before he would pass this. You really think overnight he just had a spiritual awakening? He's like, you know what, guys, let's just sing Kumbaya. Like, that's not a logical shift. And that's where a lot of people struggle with investing, because you can only bring so much logic into investing. What drives the market is emotions. And a lot of this is human behavior. It comes back to the basics of fear and greed. And if you put yourself in a politician's position or an SEC chair's position or the head of a bank's position or the head of the free world's position, they have to think in terms of game theory, like winning or losing. And it's like when no one's on board with something, then you can't be on board with it. But what happens, Aaron, the second that someone else gets on board with it? All of a sudden you have to be on board with it, or you could potentially lose. That's the nature of game theory. And that's what I've always known was going to play out with crypto. It just took a little longer than we thought, because we needed a level of adoption to where it was too loud for them to ignore. And we needed some senators to get red pilled on Bitcoin and actually use it. And, like the ecosystem to mature and like people to actually see like, holy shit, this is actually a whole new world. And then more and it had to happen kind of like that. And then one day the dam breaks. And once one party is considering it, you have to now have a sweep.
Right.
Or else what happens is the election will become, okay, you're pro crypto, you're anti crypto. This is a really important topic for me, so I'm just going to vote for this person. That's what will happen if the Democrats and Biden now don't do that. And that's why you saw that switch in literally hours. Literally hours. When they hadn't passed anything for years. It's his entire presidency, Aaron. Nothing. No, not even budging. Nothing. And then in hours, we love crypto. We're accepting. It's like, what?
Because they see that ratio on his Twitter going up, and they're like, oh, crap. This is what the people want.
Because the game that they're playing is, okay, constantly run market research and analytics and then regurgitate what the popular vote is. That's all that they're playing. It's like constantly change the masks, if that makes sense. So, this feeds right in. We'll keep the crypto conversation going. So I talked about it a little bit. I wanted to walk people through. This guy did a really good breakdown, better than like a news article. So I wanted to use this. So the FIT 21 bill passed. Let's check it out.
It's a great meme.
Yeah, it is a great meme. So it says Biden just said he wants comprehensive crypto regulations. Time for another explainer thread. Let's check it out. FIT 21 stands for Financial Innovation and Technology for the 21st Century Act. I know the memes are good.
Memes are good on this channel, bro.
Yeah. So we could go into it, but it would be confusing to read that language. So we'll stick with the overview summary. FIT 21 has a few key areas and provisions. It delineates when the SEC or the CFTC has jurisdiction, gives consumer protections around transparency and disclosures for promoters and endorsers, prohibits agencies from preventing people using crypto. That's the big one.
Yeah. Wow.
Asks the Treasury to study stable coins.
Whoa.
These people are these I should say entities are so behind that they just they don't understand it, so they've just demonized it. And what has happened is they haven't taken it seriously enough. And now it's almost like they looked out their window and there's 50,000 people in their front yard like protesting, "We demand change." That's kind of how I'm seeing this in a metaphorical sense.
Well, that's what always happens when you live in a high castle, estranged from the normal person in your luxurious mansion of power and money, is that the peasant class continues evolving and growing, and you're way too removed from it to understand the pulse of the community. And so you'll be way behind on the change of the tide. And I explained that earlier with different examples. This is another perfect example of that, of the biggest financial institutions on our planet don't even understand crypto like the average 30-year-old guy does. You know what I mean? That's wild.
It is wild. So it goes on to say FIT 21 tries to define terms around decentralized systems and when networks are sufficiently decentralized to no longer be a security. That is the most important part of the entire bill, is what I was talking about earlier, Aaron, where they wouldn't budge because they were claiming that, okay, fine, Bitcoin, that's a commodity. They studied it enough, the white paper, to understand, okay, this is different. This is something else. This isn't a security. But everything else, these are securities, so they have to go through blah, 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 and they're never going to pass those.
SEC, yeah.
So we're going to write them off. And what this did is they studied them more. Maybe there was some lobbying efforts. Who knows? Maybe it's just game theory and they're like, shit, we just have to do this or we're going to lose. But whatever, right? We're in an election year. Keep that in mind. Like, people want to get reelected. There's a lot going on. But regardless, what they finally did is they put on paper in policy and legislation new definitions around cryptocurrencies and no longer calling them a security, which was their last straw and like the last thing they were hiding behind that was allowing them to basically just say, nope, we're not even going to have a conversation. These are risky. These are used for fraudulent means. We're not going to let the average person have access to these. Now they are essentially, to paraphrase what the bill talks about, as long as there's a sufficient level of decentralization in a given coin, it is not classified as a security. Therefore, the SEC does not have any reason to rule over it or limit its access, and the public can safely invest in it.
Now, who proposed this bill, FIT 21?
I believe it went up for a vote on the floor of the House.
Wow.
So it went up for a vote, and what's crazy, I think it'll talk about it in a second, but Republicans and Democrats voted on it, and a percentage of the Democrats voted yes. So that's where we're seeing this shift, because I don't know if you've seen any of the stuff recently, Aaron, of like the floor of the Senate. Sometimes there will be videos that come out on Twitter where they're like just straight arguing and like name calling each other and whatever. Like they can never agree on stuff. Well, recently they've started agreeing on stuff. So this is where it comes up. Like, are they just wanting to get reelected? Is it coming down from the president? Like, I don't know, but Democrats they won't budge. Like Elizabeth Warren, and there's a lot of memes about going on about some of these types where they're just not willing to budge because they're like, oh, well, I'm this is the party I am, and this is what we believe, and I refuse to think outside of this box. And that seems to be shifting like literally in the last month, which is kind of crazy to see. The SEC has to review applications and respond in 90 days. If the SEC determines an asset operates without a controlling entity, the asset is a commodity, and the CFTC has jurisdiction. This is very important because the nature of a lot of cryptocurrencies is that they are decentralized. Proof of stake. There's a bunch of validators that validate the chain, and it operates off of something called proof of stake, which means that there is a ton of different, random average people like you and me who can be validators who stake our coins, and we actually provide protection and decentralization to the network so that the security and the technology is not housed in one centralized location, because that creates like corruptibility. There's issues there.
I'm staked on a number of my coins.
What?
I'm staked on a number of my coins.
Exactly. So that's why we get paid for that, because you're providing a valuable service to the network by being a validator or a staker. So this is big because like most of the things that we are interested in investing in, like none of us watching the show probably would want centralized cryptocurrencies. You know what I mean? The point is decentralized. So of
course, yeah.
As long as it can pass the definition of that, then they will not deem it a security. And this opens the door, Aaron, for ETFs outside of just Ethereum now, where we're probably going to start to see the floodgates. And I'll talk about this later, but this may very well be the narrative and sentiment change that was needed for what you could call a super cycle, or a longer and higher than expected bull run in terms of adoption this cycle before the next bear market. So Anyway, it's not perfect. And then we have the White House. Once again, Biden claiming that this is not going to be vetoed. So we'll have to see.
Wow.
We've had, Elizabeth Warren, people like that starting to change their tune, and Gensler and all of this. So it's a very interesting thing. Like, to me, a lot of this has to do with the fact that it's an election year. So Biden's now in a position where, because even his own party, enough of them voted to get this bill passed, because if it was just Republicans, it wouldn't have passed.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's sitting on his doorstep, and if he doesn't approve this, what is his campaign trail going to be, and the debates and the narrative around him? It's going to be that he's the anti-crypto president, and Trump is going to focus on that, and RKJ is going to focus on that. That will guarantee a lost election, because 50 million Americans, that's substantial.
Own
right?
crypto, yeah.
Yes. So
And I mean,
he literally can't do that now. So we've reached this cool place where, like, they're not able to do what they want to do. They have to act like they're pro something. They're not.
Yep. Which is great to see, because even the average person who doesn't own crypto probably isn't for the government banning crypto.
Yes.
Like the average person who maybe they don't feel safe enough to invest in it for whatever reason, they're still not going to be like, yeah, but the government should ban it.
Yep.
Like, that's a very small percentage of the population that thinks that. The average person's like, government should stay out of our business. If somebody wants to buy crypto, they should be able to. I don't want to invest in it. It's too risky for me, but like banning it's ridiculous.
Yep.
So you've got the vast majority of America who would be fully against a policy like banning crypto. So yeah, it's like, there's the power of unity. There's the power that we, the people, possess. If we can get unified on certain matters, it's game over for the power structure, because the power structure feeds on the collective and what we think and believe. I kind of think about it like you have this little like hen house of rats, and there's like two sides of hamster wheels on either side. One side's painted blue, one side's painted red. And you've got these two people that are trying to convince the rats to come to their side and run in their hamster wheels so they can charge up their batteries and get power from it. And both people on the blue and the red side have to convince these rats to do what they want. So they tell the rats whatever the rats want to hear, right? I'll give you so much cheese if you just run on this wheel for me. You're going to love running on the wheel. It's going to be the best thing ever for you. Your kids are going to want to run on it. And so the rats believe it for a while, and then they get tired, and they're like, I don't want to run on this wheel anymore. I'll give you double the cheese if you keep running. And then the blue guy's like, no, come over to my side. My wheel's way better. Neither one of them are ever telling the rats something that's going to benefit the rats. They just have to make it sound like they're going to benefit the rats, because all their power depends on them, right? They have to control the minds, rule the minds of their population. That's all that politics is. They're never telling you something that's actually for your good. It's always for their good. But of course, they have to make it sound like it's for your good. And this is the big jig that's up in the collective consciousness, that people have finally woken up, right? The rats have woken up to the game that they've been subjected to. And that's why you get populist candidates like Trump being elected now, where we've really kind of crossed this Rubicon, where before it was always two establishment candidates, right? It was always the guy on the red side that they handpicked and the guy on the blue side that they handpicked, or sometimes a woman. And that was the way it's been for 100 plus years in our country. And then you get enough people waking up to, hey, both of these guys are working for the deep state. I don't like either candidate. And you see a guy like Trump, who's a businessman who loves our country because it allowed him to make billions. And he's like, I'm tired of these land pirates hijacking the government so they can make money and profit off of people's taxes and proxy wars. Like, our government has been completely taken over by these deep state actors. And he's a guy who's used to kicking ass, right? So he wants to go in there and show how much ass he can kick and take the country back, which he did for 4 years. The deep state didn't like it. Now we see this all-out affront campaign against Trump, where they're throwing every possible, book at him they can find to get him ineligible to run again. And I think all of this drama we've seen since 2016 to now is because we've crossed a Rubicon, where now there's no longer ever going to be two establishment candidates running against each other, because the people have woken up. It's going to for a while be one establishment candidate and one populist candidate. And maybe they'll even flip parties on who it is. Maybe the next round in a decade or so, the Democrat party will have a genuine populist candidate who wants to actually help the people. And the rhinos on the Republican side will have the deep state candidate. Who knows, right? But we can't go back to where we were anymore. And I think eventually the establishment versus the populist will lead to only populist candidates can run for president, because people are going to be able to sniff out the government actors very easily now, because we've got the internet, we've got independent journalists that report on this stuff in real time. It's just so hard to get away with the same deceit and crimes that the government has been getting away with for so long before the internet and social media really took off. So I see the internet as this kind of like compression container for our collective consciousness, where people can learn and grow and evolve like exponentially faster than we could before the internet. I mean, even like the negative karma that people carry, back in the 20s, let's say, if you were the kind of person who carries a lot of pent up anger, like you can't get in an argument with somebody unless you bump into some guy on the street and he bops your top hat off and you're like, hey, watch where you're going, you idiot. That's the way you got in arguments before the internet was in real life. Now anybody who has that karma of like, I'm angry, I got a bone to pick, I got to fight people today, I want to get into an argument, I want to prove my point. Well, they can go all day on the internet and burn that karma off in the comment section of YouTube and Instagram and get in 20 arguments a day with people. And from the perspective of somebody who studies spiritual evolution, that's a really good thing, because it's speeding up the rate of evolution, that people are working out their karma on the internet and learning and growing faster because of it. And we see that big time. We see this huge shift from extreme wokeism just a few years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. It was like the main force of our society. And just in 4 or 5 years, it's worked itself out of the collective. It's not cool to be woke anymore. It's cool to be based, right? And it's cool to talk against woke talking points. And so that's where the pendulum swung, because we had 5 years of people going crazy on the internet about all the woke stuff. So I say all that to say that I get very optimistic when I see these things happening, the arguing about crypto and government says this, and then 2 years later they say the opposite. I'm like, you see this? We're in a pressure cooker right now for the evolution of consciousness, that ideas are being exchanged so freaking fast, and public discourse happens so fast because of podcasts and media, that like we literally have no clue what world we're going to be looking at in just 10 years, which you could never have said that in the past. Like, it was pretty predictable in the past where you might be in 10 years. Now it's like truly none of us have an idea. It's going too fast for any of us to predict.
Yeah. Even 2030, people are not prepared for how the world is going to look. And I don't say that from a scarcity perspective. I'd say that from an innovation perspective.
Yeah.
Real quick, I wanted to show this also. So it was like a two-parter, but I'm just going to quickly show this. We don't need to go into it.
Whoa, what? I didn't see this.
Yeah. So same thing, man, where they passed FIT 21, I think in the same week. The House also passed a bill banning the Federal Reserve from issuing a CBDC.
Look at that.
And it's called the CBDC Anti-Surveillance State Act. And it was introduced by Tom Emmer, who's a Republican out of Minnesota, seeks to block the U.S. central bank from continuing efforts towards the development of the digital dollar. Republicans expressed concerns that a U.S. CBDC could be used to control Americans. And overall, 213 Republicans and 3 Democrats voted for the bill, while 192 Democrats voted against it. So it's moving forward from the House to, I believe, the president. We'll see about that. The House passage of FIT 21 represents a watershed moment and badge of congressional validation for the crypto industry, both the market structure and so it was passed in the Senate it was passed in the House. Now it has to go to the Senate. I believe that's how that works. So I just wanted to share that with people. It's, TBD, but regardless, as always, the perspective that I look at these things from, conversations are being had, awareness is being spread, the pendulum is swinging. It's not necessarily that all of these things will be passed right away, though the Bitcoin ETF and Ethereum ETF has been. And it looks like the FIT 21, once again, Biden's kind of cornered. He doesn't really have a choice here. Let's see, we're going June, July, August, September, October, elections in November, right?
5 months.
He's got 5 months. You really think he's going to decline a crypto bill? I mean, that'd be nail in the coffin. So I guess does he want to get reelected? Do they want him to get reelected? Right. So, but anyway, CBDC, pretty bananas. Less Democrat support there, but even 3 of them voted, which is kind of crazy. And regardless, these things are really, what this is telling me more than anything else is like, they're finally paying attention and they recognize that the next 4 years, cryptocurrency is going to be a central topic, a constant topic. And they weren't giving it the respect that it deserved this presidency from 2020 to 2024. It wasn't really talked about enough. And I feel like the government was just kind of saying like, oh, SEC, that's you guys. And like the SEC didn't understand it. So they're just like, denied.
Yeah.
And so like no innovation really occurred. It got like stifled a lot in terms of policy. Whereas where we're shifting now, we survived from 2020 to 2024. From 2024 to 2028, this is going to be a powerful time for decentralized technologies, for innovation, and just in general, like the pendulum is swinging. I think it's very apparent.
Yep.
In your clips, in my clips, in this show. Why are we doing the show? I mean, the pendulum is swinging. Nothing just, and that's the issue with like the truthers, right? It's just all doom and gloom. They're not recognizing like the nature is like circular.
Yeah.
The nature of evolution. So it's like we were heavily, too far over here, and then we swing too far over here, and like it feels a lot more balanced right now.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd call it balanced, but less. We're not on either polar side right now.
It's becoming much more balanced.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. We're not as polarized as we were even just a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to understand the evolution of society and where things are heading, you have to get good at looking at trends and big pictures versus like always zeroing in on every little issue. Like truthers tend to do this, right? Where if they don't get exactly what they want, then evil has won the day. It's all going to hell. We're doomed. And I'm always looking at the big picture of trends in society and saying, no, actually, it looks really great from this vantage point. We're heading in the right direction. But from what I can see, we have to get through some serious shit first, but we're going to get through it. And then we're going to get to that promised land we're looking for. And that promised land would be the adoption of crypto as a major form of currency. And you just had, again, the upcoming likely president saying he's going to do it. Let's just look at the implications of if that actually happens, right?
Yep.
What if Trump actually allows cryptocurrency or even just Bitcoin or whatever to be used as a major form of currency in our country? Oh my goodness, dude. Oh my goodness. I mean, first of all, you'll never ever have the possibility of a CBDC ever again. Once people truly use crypto as a form of a value exchange and currency, and now people's money is not inflating constantly, but it's deflating and they're getting richer while they just hold on to Bitcoin and their money goes farther every month than the previous month. Like people are going to really, really love that. And it's going to wake people up to just how freaking awful that the US dollar has been and what a truly control mechanism it's been.
Yep.
The fact that the Fed can print it infinitely and just use it however they want to. People have been born into this system like you and I. And so very few people have the awareness to appreciate how insidiously corrupt the Federal Reserve is and the way they use the dollar is. But once you have people using crypto, they're going to wake up to that real quick and say, oh my gosh, end the Fed yesterday. You know, and people are going to wake up to these ideas that the minority of us have been shouting from the mountaintops for a while. Now the collective gets a chance to do that. And then second layer of this is once the average person is using crypto as a store of value, as a form of exchange, we're all used to this blockchain thing now. Wow, the blockchain, it's so great. All my money's safe. It's right in my own wallet. I can send it to you in a second. No banks needed, no intermediaries. It's fully protected, unhackable. We love the blockchain. Wait a minute. Why aren't we using this for our voting? You know what I mean? That's another idea that's going to come sparking in the collective consciousness once people see the utility of the blockchain as a decentralized technology. They're going to say, well, we're never going to accept a digital currency from a bank now. Why would we when we have Bitcoin that's decentralized? Number two, why aren't our freaking elections on this so we can stop hearing all this constant bickering about election fraud?
Yep.
Look at these ideas that start to unravel just when you have the adoption of cryptocurrency in a country. I mean, and we're this close to that happening. So again, we have no idea what world we might be living in just like 2030.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to change everything from how business contracts are done, legal contracts,
Smart contract.
education, policing. Just that nature of a smart contracts are going to change everything.
Yep.
Like it will essentially eliminate fraud, even fraud in the inducement and some of that stuff, right? Of like
Money laundering.
all these contracts that we've entered into that we don't fully understand. Like
Yep.
it's going to make things completely transparent, and it's going to be there for everyone to see. Politicians aren't going to be able to like hide certain things anymore. And like, so I mean, this is as I always say, like this is a generational shift, and it's not going to happen overnight, and it's going to be rocky, and there's going to be, cycles and pendulum swings in the micro, but in general, like we're heading in a great direction, and faith is important.
Or maybe you and I are just serial optimists, bro, and it's all going to hell and we're not aware of it.
It's funny because I'm a very, I mean, you know how I am for the audience. I'm a very practical person, and I'm quite risk averse. I'm not very I'm not very head in the clouds type. And so if I'm telling you guys that things are looking bright, like that's coming from data-driven research and trends. That's not coming from like the visions I'm getting when I'm meditating. You know what I mean?
Or speculation. Yeah.
Like, so even for those that are like more skeptical, or the world's going to shit, it's like, I mean, you can find examples of that, but you study any period of mass innovation, transformation, or wealth transfers, whether that's like changing of a currency, changing of a political system, changing of the way that cities are structured, changing of education, like any major system, when those transitions happen, like it's always been extremely rocky. Like that's what that feels like. But that's not the same thing as saying we're going backwards, or the Antichrist is here, or whatever. Like when you study history, like people have been saying the same things over and over, like Jesus is coming back, like the world's gonna burn, and look at how horrible we are to each other, or like whatever, like it's all gonna topple. And it's like, those are emotions. And while everyone's emotions are valid from a self-worth perspective, those don't belong in what you're factoring in to make decisions about the future, especially when we're talking about financially. And so like my job is, as best I can, to remove those emotions and just look at trends and such. And from what I'm seeing and have been seeing, things are turning out way better than I expected.
Same, bro.
And I expected positive. I've never been the doom and gloom camp. I expected positive. I mean, I study innovation. You're not going to like innovation if you're someone who thinks like technology is the Antichrist, or like we're going in a bad direction. Because the nature of innovation is that it's speeding things up. So why would you want to speed up the rate at which we kill ourselves, right? Like, I don't believe that, or I wouldn't believe in innovation. That's kind of a conflict of interest, right? Yeah. So I literally like focus on this on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis. And it is playing out way better than expected. I'm just saying,
I would agree.
Democrat, Republican, black, white, like all the agendas were being sold about division and polarity. Like, I don't know. We're a lot more united than I think we thought 4 years ago. I think we just have a collective PTSD a little bit from what went down. But like at the end of the day, we're all human. And I think the vast, vast, vast majority of us are pro-human.
For sure. We talked about that like 2 months ago. One of our bold predictions, I said, I think we're going to see left and right beginning to merge more and more, and waking up to the fact that we have one common enemy. Our government is subjugating all of us equally, blue or red. And so why are we fighting each other? I think we're starting to see that already. And things like cryptocurrency being adopted are also going to bring people together. Yep. Because anything that's good for the collective itself brings people together, right? We can agree on something now.
Yes. Exactly.
And they've given us only things to disagree on for that purpose, to keep us divided. And there's just too many things happening that are going to put us back in agreement with each other.
Yeah.
And so like maybe I'm biased, but everywhere I look, I just see positive news, bro.
Yeah, I mean, a more equal system, Of course, there's going to be bigger
Who doesn't
winners
want
than
that?
others. There's going to be winners and losers in any game. That's the nature of playing a game that has rules. But wouldn't you want a more fair game where at least you know the rules? You can read them because they're on a transparent ledger.
Mhm.
Just that alone is way more fair for everyone watching this than the current fiat system where you can't even read legalese and you don't even understand how much it's actually being stolen from you and you were never taught how to create more of it.
Yep. And all the money in your wallet is a melting ice cube.
So that causes us to like fight each other.
For
I
sure.
mean, like not necessarily like for me and you, but like the vast majority of Americans are really struggling. I just saw a statistic, which is fucking brutal, that 57% of Americans don't have $1,000 for an emergency.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that too.
So I understand why, people are, I mean, you're going to really be in fight or flight. Like if that's your, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like if you're at that stage where you're struggling to just provide like shelter and basic safety. So that's the situation that we're in. And so of course it makes sense from that level of consciousness, like to fight people that have different beliefs than you, because your safety feels like it's tied to this thing has to happen in order for my life to get better. And in reality, it's like any of that energy that's being projected out, like none of, I'll say us, but whoever you're like fighting with or arguing with on the internet or upset at because of their skin color or their ideologies or their religions, like they're not the issue. They didn't make the system. They might be benefiting from it more than you, but they didn't choose that. They were probably born into that, or they have certain beliefs, or they were raised a certain way or whatever. And so it's like, yeah, it's just so interesting, the bait and switch that gets pulled, and they're like, look over here. And so the more we can shift the financial system, and this is why my whole thing is conscious wealth, it can really allow people the opportunity for their consciousness and their soul to elevate, for their spiritual ascension or maturity, when they can get out of just constantly being in these dense energies of I'm just trying to fucking survive.
Mm-hmm.
And they can start to ask deeper questions now, and because you
Yeah,
own
so important.
the money that you're holding now is uncorruptible, and there's only 21 million that will ever be in existence, and you can stake it and earn a real yield, and you can add value to the marketplace and do decentralized barter, and all of a sudden the amount of Bitcoin you're holding today, in 10 years it's not worth any less, so you're not getting poorer over time, so you
Probably
can
worth a
actually
whole lot
start
more.
to work on getting ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And so you work harder and you'll actually be rewarded for that. And you'll be able to maintain more of your wealth for doing that. Versus the system now, you work harder and you actually have less wealth over time. So what's the point of working harder?
Yep.
So I really see this. And once again, guys, like it's not that I'm just some materialistic person that only cares about money. And I've seen comments of that sometimes in some of our recent episodes. I saw a few people saying like, Jeremy, I was wrong about you. I thought you were just a money obsessed, whatever. Because why else
You're
would
like,
you have a
I know
money
you
brand,
did.
right? But in reality, it's like, no, it's just because money's fucking important. Like you can't overlook Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like you need to be at a certain level of, I shouldn't say you need to, because you can actualize through poverty, but that's not going to be the common path. For most people, it's going to be easier to help reach some level of financial security and financial independence. And then it's a more organic spiritual evolution, because you're not in these lower, denser energies where you're always dealing with daily fear of how am I going to feed my family. And that's really my mission at the heart. Like most of you watching this, like you don't necessarily care about generational wealth. Like it sounds nice, but you're probably like, I would just like to be able to fucking like relax with my family.
Yeah.
You know what
Buy a
I mean?
new
Like most of
car.
America is not even in that headspace. And I understand that.
Yeah.
And so that's really like, the mission, and why we end up talking about financial stuff a lot on here is because it's fucking important. And the more that, the more that we have these beliefs of like, oh, money's not that important, or it's the root of all evil, or I'd be greedy it's like, what are you talking about? Like you only have $2,000 in your checking account and you think you're greedy because you want more?
Yeah.
Like that hurts, to know. And that's hard that like we treat ourselves that way.
It's also a kind of indictment on the creator to believe that God can't use money for good. It can only be used for evil. It can't be used for good. What a limiting belief.
Yeah.
Like we absolutely need more conscious millionaires and billionaires on the planet to offset all the unconscious ones that are only concerned with taking more power. Like I have a few friends that are conscious millionaires who basically their whole life now is just spent investing in projects they believe in that help humanity, whether it's new supplements or new technologies that they believe are going to help. And it's like we desperately need people who can throw a few $1,000,000 at a free energy device that needs to get off the ground or whatever. Yep. We got to have people waiting in the wings who can do that. Is that everybody's dharma in this life? Of course not. Not everybody needs to be a conscious millionaire or billionaire, but we certainly need them. So let's not make it a cultural thing in the spiritual community to see people with wealth as being unenlightened or lesser than or less valid. It's absolutely a path of dharma that some people can choose to walk. And if I'll be honest about it, it's a very difficult path to walk. It takes people with conscious wealth are high integrity beings, because you've got that temptation of you could use this for your own self. And by the time that you're, somebody who is using large sums of money to donate or to give to projects that are going to benefit humanity, you've done a tremendous amount of spiritual work on yourself to avoid your ego hijacking that wealth for its own gain. So I highly respect people that are conscious, that have lots of money, and I'm very grateful to those people because of the impact they can have in a society that's run on money. It's just the way it is. Like maybe you and I don't want it to be that way, but that is the way it is. And so as long as we have a society that's run off of money, we might as well use it for the kingdom of God rather than just saying, well, it's all evil, just give it to the devil, let the devil use it. And that's clearly not a winning strategy either, right?
Yeah. Beautifully said. I had someone in my comments yesterday post something along the lines, I'll paraphrase it, and they were like, why do we need someone, I assume they were referencing me, why do we need someone to teach us freedom when we're all inherently free? And then there was something about like that I was inferring that people needed to be like wealthy or they weren't free or something. And I thought it was like a beautiful reflection of like where they were at and an opportunity for me to kind of clarify at least my intentions and such. And basically what I kind of responded back was like, we're having two separate conversations. Spiritually, every single one of us is free, and you don't need anyone. Oh, because he was like, why do we need someone to teach us this? We're already all born free. Or whatever. And it's like, absolutely. You don't need someone to teach you that you're already spiritually free. We were born that way. You don't need to earn it. You don't need to do anything. We literally just need to let go of what we're not to become what we are. And so it's organic. You don't need some guru. And that's,
yeah.
But what I said is, but I think where the gap is like, we live in a capitalistic society. And so when I reference freedom, I'm not saying people aren't whole or spiritually free, or that they need me or my teachings or anyone for that matter to reach those states. But in a capitalistic society, money matters. And so financially, most people are very far from free. And most of us do need education, access to knowledge, usually some semblance of a mentor or guidance in those realms, because it just so happens that the system that we live in is a capitalistic system. It's an important distinction there. To piggyback off of some of what you were saying, where it's like, we're all already free and we live in a capitalistic society. So like you can be free spiritually and poor, and you can be free spiritually and wealthy. And one of those is going to be able to make a bigger impact in a capitalistic society.
Right.
If we didn't live in a capitalistic society, if we lived in more of a utopia or a barter society or a super spiritually advanced society, then I would agree much more so with the people who are like, the best thing you can do is just meditate all day and raise your consciousness, and it's pointless like trying to chase wealth and blah, blah, blah. I used to believe that. And I've been seeing that lately in some of our comments, which is probably why I'm addressing it, because I genuinely feel that that's a little bit of a trap and a bit bypassy. It's just that you're not accounting for the fact that in America and in any of the first world countries, we're in a capitalistic society. So the way in which you're going to desire to make impact is going to require, well, you're going to have to play by the rules of the game. And what do we use for our tokens of resources and influence in this game? Well, we currently use fiat dollars. Hopefully soon we use crypto, but we call that money. And so you can be as spiritually free as you want, but barring anomalies like, the Dalai Lama or Gandhi or whatever, where maybe they didn't need a lot of money, Jesus Christ. Okay. But you're not Jesus Christ. I'm not, you're not. Like, you tell me, Aaron, does it take money and wealth and resources to make the impact that you're currently making?
I would say yes.
I mean, there's a lot more that goes into what we do than I think people realize. And especially, what you're going to go on to do.
No doubt.
I know you're just getting started and I'm just getting started, and there's so many beautiful things that, you intend to do and that I intend to do. And that requires resources. And we get so emotional about the name of the resources that it requires, money.
I agree. And if God hates money so much, if it's so unspiritual in God's eyes, why does God love giving me so much money? Because dude,
we gotta
anytime
put that in the hook right there, Aaron.
anytime I need funding for a new project, a new idea for my business, the money comes in every time.
Yeah.
Because I'm serving the kingdom of heaven and nothing else. I have no other intention for my life than to leave the biggest footprint on this planet for the light as I can. And so because of that intention, money flows to me quickly and easily, and I use it for the kingdom of God every time. And so it keeps flowing. It's clearly not the universe's belief that money is bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's powerful, man. The real life affirmations. We're on the exact same page with that, and I know we got a little bit sidetracked, but I think it's important we consistently come back to that because
it's a big topic, man.
Yeah, it's like why are we always collabing, and why is there such synergy here, right? And I think that's the area where our worlds converge heavily. You're
Big
teaching
time.
people a certain path to self-actualization, easing suffering, and spiritual ascension. And I'm trying to do the same thing.
Yeah,
We're just doing it from different angles.
totally.
And anyone who's ever actually engaged with me, learned from me, had a conversation with me, been a student of mine, understands that what you're doing and what I'm doing aren't actually that different. It's just you're going 5D down and I'm going 3D up. And that's really it.
Nice.
So it might look like what I'm doing is materialistic or, another message about money. Wonderful. It's not about that. It's so much bigger than that. So even like in messages like today, guys, and I'll wrap it up in a second and then we'll move on with the show. But the clips are recurringly about cryptocurrency, about politics, about money, about whatever it is, because all of those things are important to the rules in this third dimension. And the rules on this planet, we didn't choose them, but what I do is I study the rules and I try to empower people with the rules so that you can play the game at a higher level. And when you can play the game at a higher level, you're going to naturally have more energy and more alignment and more lightness in your life. You're going to have less of the dense energy, and that's going to allow you to ascend in a more natural way. It's going to make your life feel less dense. And then if you keep working on it and you can get out of these selfish levels of consciousness where you're just focused on yourself, you get to the level where me and Aaron are at, where the money that you're making is not for you. The life that you're living, the business that you're running, it's not about you. You're now devoting your entire life, which requires money, to help others go from where you used to be. We both have a background of suffering, right, Aaron? Talked about your story on my podcast. Mine was more with drugs, jail, just a low consciousness lifestyle. We understand what that's like. And it takes a combination of new knowledge, new inputs, new beliefs, new environments to change your life. And a big piece of that is your spiritual practices, what you're putting in your vessel, what your day-to-day looks like, and your relationship to, your ego and your heart and all of that. And also when you get up out of lotus position, the other 23 hours of the day, and you're living life as a normal human on this planet, money matters. And so these things are synergistic. And so we're going to, continue to be talking about the spiritual realms and continue to be talking about the financial realms until you guys either, I guess, unsubscribe or allow us to brainwash you that it is okay to be wealthy and also a child of God. I mean, if Satan could speak, I think, or if he had one wish, I think that would be a top choice of spell that he would want us under in regards to our beliefs around abundance and what we're worthy of. Because like you said, on this planet, all of the wealth is currently held by Luciferians.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my rant.
Well, you're right. It's the belief in lack that you're touching on. And that's something I teach. It's the first belief of ego is the belief in lack. I am lacking. So that is essentially the devil's favorite belief to convince you of. And I mean, there's also something to be said about, we talk about this, right, Jeremy? If you've got a really, really messy house, that's a spiritual problem. If you are really irresponsible with your hygiene, that's a spiritual problem. If you can't keep your word to people, that's a spiritual problem. If you can't meet your basic needs because you're so poor, that's a spiritual problem, right? It's absolutely not God's will that any of God's children should go without their needs being met. Mother Earth itself is designed to care for and supply all of our basic needs. And this was even like, I love the Essenes. This was one of the Essenes' main philosophies was they didn't have any money in their society. And they taught, it was one of the Essene creeds, that when you go out, take no cloak or tunic with you. Just wear your sandals, your robe, and go out and trust that God will provide every meal you need, every place to sleep. And that's how the Essenes would travel, was taking nothing for the needs of their body. And Jesus himself, of course, being a Nazarene, also is quotes that exact same Essene creed in the Gospel of Matthew and Luke. He says, when you go out, take nothing with you, to his disciples. Take nothing for the wants of your body, but trust God to supply all your needs. And so having all your basic needs met is a spiritual prerequisite for embodiment. And so if you can't meet your basic needs and yet you're judging other people for having money, maybe that's why you're not getting your basic needs met, because you've got a judgment about money that's causing you to be a mismatch to receiving money, and thus your basic needs can't be met. So we should all strive to get to the place where maybe you don't want to make millions of dollars in your life. That's fine. You don't have to. But you should absolutely have all your needs met and never struggle to put food on the table, to have a roof over your head. That's a basic spiritual tenet. You should also have as much money as you need to fulfill your dharma in this life, whatever that looks like. Whatever your form of service is, you should have abundant money to filter into that avenue, whatever it is, to make a clear path for you to serve your dharma in this life. Those are the two things that if you don't want to be a conscious millionaire, no problem. Make sure you have your basic needs met and enough money to be of service to the world in the way you want to be of service. And I think we could all agree that those would be prerequisites to embodiment.
Beautifully said. Very beautifully said. All right.
So getting back to the money conversation, I'm going to pull up my reaction clip for you.
Cool.
Because, we just talked about crypto and all the positive benefits of it. But one of the things that I think has woken up America, at least, to the necessity of crypto is by seeing the rampant corruption in the financial sector, in the government, with the use of money, and just the absolute woeful inadequacy of people in these positions of power that are clearly not equipped to be there. It's something that I think rubs people really, really wrong and really frustrates people when we see, like, these are our elected officials, these are our leaders. They don't even understand the basics of how this works.
Yeah.
And that's because, again, the corrupt system we have today was not invented by a bunch of mustache twirling villains at a round table. It was slowly and gradually evolved over the last 100+ years, where, again, any position of power is like a vacuum for the negative polarity to fill. Any position of power, doesn't matter what it is. Somebody with a selfish ego is going to get attracted to that position. And if you don't expect that that's going to happen, at least at this stage in our collective evolution, we're not yet an enlightened civilization. We all know that. So we should, as an act of wisdom, right, we should expect every position of power available on our planet will most likely be weaponized by somebody who lusts for power. And if we can put stipends and protections in place for positions of power, we can prevent these people from taking up these positions and weaponizing them like they have been. But we haven't done that. We haven't taken money out of politics and all these basic, obvious things we should do. And so we have a government now that is run by totally incapable people that just want money and power. And so they pretend to be the senator, the congressman, the president, the treasurer, the whatever. They pretend to be their position. But at the end of the day, they're only there for how they can benefit from it. The vast majority, I'm not saying every single person, but the vast majority of people, at the end of the day, if you could search their heart of hearts, they really just want money and power. And most of them are not even subtle about it, right? It's like, what are you going to do to stop me? I'm here. I'm using this position for power. You're too little. I'm too big. But now we're getting to the point with the internet and social media where we share these things on a daily basis. And a lot of these people that have, all these kind of like fat cows that are just taking up seats in Congress, in the Senate, in the financial system, in the government, they're getting called out publicly more and more of like, you don't belong here. We're voting your ass out. The second there's a new election, we're getting somebody in who can actually do this job and doesn't want to just make money or send $100 billion to Ukraine and to Israel to fund more proxy wars so you guys can make money and get even fatter. No, we want somebody who's actually going to make the country better for us. And one of the things I saw a week ago, and I think I sent you this clip, Jeremy, was this clip of Biden's economic advisor trying to explain
this is a good one.
Trying to explain how money works. I gave that entire preface to set this clip up. If this doesn't show you exactly what I just explained, nothing will. Check this out.
The U.S. government can't go bankrupt because we can print our own money.
It obviously begs the question, why exactly are we borrowing in a currency that we print ourselves? I'm waiting for someone to stand up and say, why do we borrow our own currency in the first place?
Like you said, they print the dollar. So why does the government even borrow?
Well, again, some of this stuff gets, some of the language that some of the language and concepts are just confusing. I mean, the government definitely prints money, and it definitely lends that money, which is why the government definitely prints money, and then it lends that money by selling bonds. Is that what they do?
It's like an SNL skit, bro.
Literally. This is like Biden when he tries to talk.
Right, since they sell bonds and people buy the bonds and lend them the money. Yeah, so a lot of times, at least to my ear with MMT, the language and the concepts can be kind of unnecessarily confusing, but there is no question that the government prints money and then it uses that money to...
He's trying so hard, bro.
So, I guess I'm just, I can't really talk. I don't get it. I don't know what they're talking about. Like, cause it's like the government clearly prints money. It does it all the time, and it clearly borrows. Otherwise we wouldn't be having this debt and deficit conversation. So I don't think there's anything confusing there.
Couple of thoughts, dude. So he keeps saying the government clearly prints money. False. I don't know if he doesn't know that, or if he knows it and is lying and using the same vernacular that every government official uses of, yes, we're the Fed, we print the money. But you and I know, and our audience knows, the Fed is a private corporation not affiliated with the government that prints the money. And that's why it's so egregious and why everybody wants to end the Fed, because they pretend to be a government agency and they're not. They're like McDonald's printing money that we have to use. And it's like, who are you that I should use your money, dude? I don't give you any authority. I'm not using your money. But we have to because the government says that they're a government agency. So I'm like, does he not know that? Or is he lying in all of his like, blah, 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 blah? Is it just him trying to think of things to say? You know what I mean? Like, I can't tell which one it is.
I definitely think it's the latter. You can't be what did it say he was? The chairman of the board of economic
advisor to the Biden administration.
You can't be in that position and not know
Yeah,
that.
I wouldn't think so.
Yeah, it's like, I think my theory would be that he's like, maybe he hasn't been, I think he hasn't been asked that in a long time or ever. And he wasn't
studied it in a long time.
And he wasn't prepared for like the PC politically correct way to say a whole lot of nothing succinctly.
Yeah.
So he was like,
He's probably been spending most of his time in government talking to his investors and lobbyists, you know what I mean? And probably doesn't stay up at night researching the economy or how money works. So when you put him on the spot, and this is like what happens to most government officials, even like the press secretary, you know, like you ask them a basic question of what's the policy on this? And they're like, it's that, yes. You're like, what? Like, that's not an answer. We just get these almost like these insults to our intelligence on a regular basis from government positions, because again, they live in a world from their high castle where they think the average person is way dumber than they are. And so they talk to us like, you'll just believe whatever I say, right? And again, people are waking up, they're talking on the internet, social media is exploding, information's being exchanged, ideas are being talked about. The collective is far surpassing the people in elected positions now in terms of their level of how tapped in they are to the culture, to reality. And these people are used to their accustomed power for the last 100+ years, where the average person wasn't very informed because there wasn't internet and social media. They just read whatever the headline on the newspaper was and believed it. So yeah, you dummies are going to believe whatever we say. But now that world doesn't exist anymore, and they don't know what to do about it, and they don't know how to interact with it. Because when they try to, we're over here like, is this a joke? Mm-hmm. But there's the dichotomy of the old system is dying, a new system's being built slowly. And these are the things you get when an old system dies and a new system replaces it, is you see how obsolete the old system is. And it's like everyone has to see it, right, before it will collapse. Because if anybody believes in it, it's going to stay propped up. And like, who's going to still vote for these people once they realize how woefully incapable they are of their position? It's a spiritual awakening, whether anybody realizes it. And so I just thought that clip was just amazing as an overall picture of like, this is really how the vast majority of elected officials are. They're not capable of the position they're hired for. They're not tuned in to the pulse of reality. They're used to their comfy meetings with lobbyists. And, you know, like there was somebody in the Senate the other day who got just absolutely torn to shreds on Twitter. It was a senator or a House member who left the open meeting of the Senate or Congress during a meeting because they had to go have a meeting with their lobbyists. Like they left their real job to go meet with people that are lobbying for them. And it's like, this happens all the time, but somebody finally caught it and tweeted about it. It was another senator called out and exposed the senator who left for a lobbyist meeting, and it enraged everybody. It's like, well, good. It should enrage you because this happens all the time. You just don't know about it. And now you're learning about it. And these are the things that cause the old system to fall, you know, when people see it for what it is finally.
Yeah, to me, this is a conversation of incentives, which we've talked about before. And until we change the entire incentive structure, like the system operates exactly as it's meant to, and the right incentives aren't in place to discourage and prevent corruption, the current incentives encourage and facilitate it. So can't be mad at any given senator, president, Fed chair, economic advice. Like, I mean, they're doing what, like, I view them as like rats in a cage in a study, and they're doing what the rats in the cage in the study would do when given cocaine.
100%.
They're just coming back for more until it kills them.
Yeah.
They're just a rat in a cage, like that. You know what I mean? So
yep.
We have to change the experiment, the actual cage and the conditions, aka the incentives and the system and the model. And then us, the rats in the cage, will act differently. But we have to build guardrails because we do have this animal nature. We do have these lower level drives in the limbic brain, and we're not as, you know, holy as some of us think. I mean, hopefully they don't think that they're holy, but maybe they would. I don't know. They actually probably could. I know.
Maybe the Luciferians do.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's what I'll say on that. I want to transition because I really want to make sure we have time I want to get one more clip in.
Cool.
Because it's not financially based, and then we'll do our predictions. But I wanted to see what you know about this.
There's a lot of architecture in the world today on every continent of buildings that are much, much larger than you would think people of our height would build.
Cities in America that look as though they were constructed in medieval Europe.
The outside's incredible. but the inside is built like a palace.
I'm not sure if there were even any schools of architecture back then.
How did they know how to do this stuff?
We're at the pinnacle of our civilization now. This is the best it gets. The best we've ever done. Look at the quality of these walls.
Now you'll go through a neighborhood and every home looks the same.
Had we known we're going backwards, everyone would be pissed.
As an architect of 20 years, I like to look at a building as telling its own story. I like to say that stones don't lie.
And they're giving us timelines of like a year. It was built in a year.
The history that we've been told is a lie.
Why would a regular-sized human make something so massive?
How did they build that beautiful, beautiful building? Was that building here longer?
I feel like the building was here already.
What was actually in the towers? What kind of technology was up there?
These buildings were built by the prior civilization.
A beautiful, easy, graceful method of travel flushed down the drains.
Nope, no more airships.
And they have to lie to us about it. They had to write the storybooks. We learned about one fire, the Chicago Great Fire.
There were fires in every major city.
Burned to the ground.
It's impossible for any stone building to be burning down.
What's being kept from us is huge.
What a world it must have been.
So there's literally been a cover-up of history more than one way.
Oh, the humanity.
Take my money.
You ever gone down any of those rabbit holes about the giant people and like how our buildings used to be like beautiful, advanced, massive architecture, and now they're just like disrespectful
little boxes?
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. Tartaria for sure. I've done a little bit of digging on that. The only giant based stuff I've looked at is biblical times giants. I don't know when those buildings are dated to, but I imagine not.
I believe
1800s. That's not that long ago.
I know.
Yeah, I just feel like if nothing else, our science of architecture has definitely regressed quite a bit. I'm a big fan of the idea of learning how, like extraterrestrials apparently build all of their buildings, if you want to call them that, structures, according to sacred geometric shapes like pyramids or domes, because they're energetically much more stable. Like there's domes right now that they make that will survive hurricanes and tornadoes no problem, because a sphere is the most stable structure in geometry, whereas a box or a box with a triangle on top is very susceptible to damage and weather and stuff. So I think we have a lot of growing to do in that field, but just the absolute artistry of architecture, even in Europe and St. Peter's Basilica, it's kind of like the pyramids of Giza, right? You look at it and you're like, I don't think anyone today could build something like this.
Yeah.
And this was hundreds of years ago that this happened.
Yeah. So do you know who Cultivate Elevate is on Instagram?
I do.
Yeah, Matt. So I've had him on our show. He's a friend of mine, and he dropped some bombs about that stuff. That was like pretty much my first more detailed introduction to it.
Same.
And that's why I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure in our episode, which you guys, if you're watching this, you can go to my channel and just search probably like Cultivate Elevate Conscious Wealth podcast or something. Anyway, at some point, I think he said it was like around 1860 or something, where there was that fire that they briefly mentioned it, the Chicago fire or something like that.
Yep.
And up until then, it was literally like this like line in the sand historical moment where like up until then, architecture looked like that. And then it got all like burned mysteriously. And then like history textbooks got like rewritten. Like it was just like a whooshing. Like, so I was like, wow, I had thought about the stuff about how you go to Europe, which I haven't even been, but you look at the architecture in Europe and it's like, oh my God, this is beautiful.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
Beautiful. Like just straight art and massive. And it's a representation of divinity.
Totally.
And then you look at architecture here and it's like, I called it disrespectful. It does not give divinity vibes.
Yeah.
And so I was aware of that aspect of how the West is going more and more away from, just art and beauty, because that probably raises our consciousness and probably inspires us. And why would you want, God forbid, you have an inspired populace?
Mm-hmm.
So I get that. Tucker Carlson has talked about it. I've heard him recently as well. But I just thought that was interesting. I was scrolling Twitter and I saw that a documentary's coming out, so I'm gonna have to watch the full thing. But the doors is what's interesting about that. So the only two theories are that, and I think I'm pretty positive, you guys will have to watch it and check me on it in the comments, but I'm pretty sure Matt in our episode was saying that there were documented giant people and even potentially aliens that were helping us build that shit. So it was either A, giant people, or B, aliens that were setting that up. And I don't remember which he said, because I consider those very similar things. Like, to me, an alien is like something that is outside of what we thought was like possible. You know what I mean? So it's like that could very well be in the realm of, anyway. Yeah, I'm fascinated that this documentary is coming out. So I wanted to drop it for the people so that this you guys can check it out if you want. That guy's name was Stu Peters, and the documentary is called Old World Order. It should be out now. And
I'm definitely gonna watch that,
so that we don't, I don't want to make this episode only political. There's lots of rabbit holes we could go into.
Mm-hmm. Well, the clip that I just played with Biden's economic advisor is from a new documentary called Finding the Money, which is really good. Highly recommended as well. I think it's on Amazon Prime and some other streaming sources. So lots of good docs coming out these days.
Cool. We'll I'll have my team put below in the description. We'll link the Old World Order, and then we'll link the what'd you call it? Something money?
Finding the Money.
Finding the Money on Amazon Prime. We'll link those two in the show notes for you guys below if you want to check those out. Cool. So now we're going to transition to our last segment of the show, guys. We appreciate you if you're still with us. I personally have a very powerful prediction, so you definitely will want to watch the rest of what we're about to get into.
I'm excited, dude.
I'm going to pass it off to you because I just showed my clip, but this will be the predictions segment of the show. And I'm going to pass it off to you, Aaron. Let's get into what's your prediction.
There was a huge bombshell that was dropped on essentially 33 years of disclosed or classified documents, undisclosed classified documents from different ET projects, whistleblowers, secret underground bases, government research projects. He basically just created a website, and it's very much in its beta form still, but his strategy was like, we need to get this out to the public fast and furious so that it can't be blocked or censored. And so he basically made the site public before announcing it, and then posted this video, did a bunch of podcasts, and was like, everybody go look, everybody go download it all, so that we all have this information, because this is what they've been suppressing for a long time, that he's been collecting for like 30 years. And so I'm going to play this clip from him talking about it, and then another clip as well from somebody else.
Blake Cousins, along with Dr. Stephen Greer, founder of the Disclosure Project, and his new mission, dropping a massive amount of data. Let me tell you, the DPIA, the Disclosure Project Intelligence Archive, is massive, and it's going to be on a website. 33 years of work, and you're about to see it. The world's going to see it, and they're going to be rocked. Dr. Greer, thanks for joining us.
Thanks. It's good to see you. And yeah, so the Disclosure Project Intelligence Archive, let me give you a little background, everyone, on this. About 3 years ago, I was asked by the senior investigators for the Senate Intelligence Committee. It was a list and description. It has thousands of pages of government documents from the US, UK, Australia, KGBs, former Soviet Union, etc. I will tell everyone, let me just say a headline right here. I was just up on Capitol Hill last week meeting with members of the House Oversight Committee and members of Congress. And quite frankly, I told them, if they had hearings that started at 9 a.m. and went till 5 p.m. every day they're in session for the next year, it would be less than 10% of what's in this archive. So when people say, when is disclosure going to happen? My friends, this is it. Now they can have an official disclosure if they ever get themselves organized. We're going to talk about this in a minute, what the status of disclosure is with the US government. But I will tell you, the reason I did this is because even though the Senate intelligence guys couldn't get it organized, we've spent about $500,000 on staff and travel and programming. The website alone costs something upwards of $100,000 to create. We're making it free to everyone. Now, we have a crowd.
So I'm going to actually show you the website now. So this is just incredible, man. So anyone can go to this website now. I think it's this one. It's in the link. The link is in that video description. It's DPIarchive.com. And it's got all the different documents and in categories. So like, let's look at secret facilities.
Bro, this is crazy.
It's just all right here, bro. We could spend a whole episode on this.
Oh man.
So we all heard about this conspiracy theory of deep underground military bases. My good friend Jason Shirka talks about these all the time. They're absolutely real. Not only are the bases real, but actually, here's a map. But the tunnel system that goes through the United States is unbelievable. I mean, look at all these
there
bases.
is in California.
It's crazy, bro.
What? There's some in the
Tons
water.
in New Mexico, right here.
There's some in the ocean.
It looks like it, yeah.
And
you know what? In the Law of One, Ra says your government has bases underwater as well as underground.
Oh my God.
But let's look at this one real
spend
quick.
a whole episode on this.
100%. So look at this. Deep underground military bases report.
Dumb is a perfect name for that.
I know, right? That's such a good acronym. For decades, rumors of deep underground military bases and extensive series of underground tunnels crossing North America have circulated within both the aerospace literature as well as Department of Defense and trade publications. What has been uncovered within public domain sources reveal a fantastic world of unacknowledged programs designed to support plans for the so-called continuity of government. And so it shows you actual pictures of these bases. There's the lid on one of them. This is the actual underground base on a kind of radar photograph. This is what's under the ground that you don't see. So look at these tunnel systems.
Holy shit.
And then
that's oh my God, look at that vault door.
So these are extremely advanced facilities that these people have built to hide the research they're doing on UFOs, extraterrestrials, aerospace technologies, that thank goodness for Dr. Greer actually pioneering this evidence getting out. But I mean, it's just incredible the kind of machinery they have and the tunnel systems. So like, that's just one document, right? We could go pick any subject you want. Major historical UFO cases, UFO crash retrievals. That looks interesting. What country do you want? Let's go Brazil. Brazil UFO crash 1996. Boom, there's the document. A lot of it's redacted, but these are government documents. Okay, so like this is coming from the horse's mouth, right? That's the first part of my bold prediction. The second part is this clip from a Harvard lawyer you've probably seen before named Daniel Sheehan. And apparently, do you remember how there was that Congress mandated whatever the organization is that keeps the UFO information secret, like might be CIA, I don't remember. Mm-hmm. They gave them a 1-year date that they have to release all information by October 18th of 2024. And I personally forgot about that. They gave them 180 days to release a fragment of information about a certain thing, and they did. And it was kind of like, there was some good stuff in it. Yeah, but it was a bit of a letdown.
Yep.
Because they're still holding, they're just not releasing what they're being asked to release. They'll give you little snippets. And it's like, no, Congress told you to release all of it, but it's all redacted and covered up. So by October 18th, they have to release the full documents of all classified information on UFOs to the public. So that's what he's talking about here.
This is the most important conversation to have right now about this entire issue of the fact that our United States government is in possession of a non-human extraterrestrial spacecraft and the occupants, that are non-human. And that they know that, and the Congress now knows that. And the American people are about ready to find out about that. And that we're going to have to adjust ourselves for this entirely new cosmic reality.
Yes, sir. October 18th. Well,
did you set your calendar or what?
Did I?
Yeah.
It is now.
Damn. Oh, man. So what's your prediction here?
So essentially my prediction is, again, what do you think is going to happen looking at trends and big picture? What do you think is going to happen if, the vast majority of American citizens find out what we know through these documents on Stephen Greer's website, that like our government has had UFOs for a very long time. They've actually had, what do they call them? Off-world entities in their possession as well. And you can go in some of those archives that I showed you and find the case files where they actually talk to ETs, describe the ETs they encounter, how the conversations go, crazy stuff. What happens to the collective consciousness when people find that stuff out? I mean, that's world-shaking, paradigm-rocking information.
Dark night of the soul collectively.
Yeah, like Dark Night of the Soul on one hand, absolute jubilation and celebration on the other hand. Like
Yes.
you and me and our audience are going to be like, yeah. And probably the Christians, Muslims, and Jews are going to be like, what do I believe now? You know, did Jesus die for their sins on their planet? Like it completely erodes the fabric of religion. And I think in terms of open contact, like this is one of the things I talk about with open contact is, again, positively polarized extraterrestrials can't infringe on free will, or it will depolarize their own energy. So they're very, very careful about the way that they interact with any civilization, especially a third density civilization that's under the veil, that doesn't have contact with other species yet. It's extremely sensitive. It's the most sensitive form of contact in the entire universe, right? So they have to manage it in a very specific way, which one of those ways is what you call the acclimation phase, where they have to hang out in our skies and reveal themselves to us from a distance to continually show us, yes, we are here. And clearly we mean no harm, right? If we wanted to do y'all harm, we could have done it 100 years ago and y'all would be slaves on our planet by now, right? Like we obviously don't mean you any harm by the very fact that we're here, but not doing anything. We're respecting your space, right? So after a certain point, the planet warms up to the contact and then begins to reach out to the extraterrestrials. And that's what they need to see from us collectively to know that it's not infringement to contact us, as our free will has to reach out to them as well, so that they know it's a mutual conversation about to happen. And I think the biggest impedance to that is monolithic religion on our planet. Because again, as I said, like, it completely upends the religious narrative of Islam, Judaism, Christianity, all the Abrahamic religions, not so much Hinduism and Buddhism and Taoism. But I mean, there's billions of people on the planet who think that we're the only intelligent species, we're God's chosen special children, you know, and that's a big block for ETs to upend billions of people's belief system of reality is definitely infringement from their point of view. So like institutional religion needs to collapse on this planet in a big way before they'll even think about contacting us. Because when such a huge percentage of the planet is religious, it kind of handcuffs them from open contact. They can hang out in our skies and, as Ra says in the Law of One, make themselves visible to us so as to open our minds to the mysterious and the infinite and the possibilities of the universe. And so that's kind of all they've been doing, but we hear more and more stories of encounters and abductions. It feels to me like the ETs are kind of like checking the pulse, right, of the planet more and more and saying, what's the temperature like? Are these people open to contact or not? And so I think just like with the crypto adoption we talked so much about, there's steps that have to happen for open contact. And one of those big steps would be like a government disclosure. And I forgot that we're literally a few months away, 3-4 months away from what is supposed to be a full disclosure of all information. We'll see if it actually is. I would hold my breath, right? But as Dr. Stephen Greer said, disclosure has already happened. This is it. This is 33 years of basically every classified document you could want to see what the government's been keeping a secret from the American people. And not just our government, but governments all over the world have been doing this. So I guess my bold prediction in summary is that we're moving closer and closer to open contact. And I think because it happens in stages, it's not like they either, extraterrestrials either land on the White House lawn and we do a TV special with them, or they don't. That's not how open contact works, right? It's going to be like different degrees of open contact will happen. Maybe more channeling will happen where ETs will start giving technology to certain groups of people that they believe are benevolent people and stuff. There's going to be degrees of contact is what I'm saying. But when you get these big steps forward, every step forward gives the extraterrestrial beings more room to interact with us. Because now that there's public disclosure, there's a little less of our free will being infringed by their contact. Now everybody knows the government has had aliens. Everybody knows the government has had UFOs for a very long time. So there's no bubble to burst anymore, right? So we give the aliens more license to communicate with us as these big events happen. So it's just exciting to know that we're a few months away of potentially, again, we'll have to wait and see, but a potentially bombshell disclosure on the whole UFO cover-up that's been going on for a very long time.
Mic drop. We could definitely do a whole episode on that. Let us know in the comments if you want us to
yeah, let us know.
Riff on ETs. I know Aaron wants to.
It could be fun, bro.
Yeah, no, I'm down. I didn't realize there was like a whole website like that laid out, which is the vault. So I'm gonna have to check that out for sure. All right, so I know we're on a little bit of a time crunch, so I'll make my prediction short and sweet. I have two main predictions. Both are crypto related. I'm really trying to prepare everyone here, and as I've been sounding the alarm bells about for a few months now, this is a unique, debatably once in a lifetime opportunity. So my first prediction is more centered around the election, and then one is more centered around crypto ETFs. First things first, as I've been saying since 2023-ish, this election is going to be centered around cryptocurrency stances as a key debate and polling topic. From the way that I'm seeing it, if you're not pro-crypto, you don't stand a chance at being elected. We talked earlier about the game theory behind that, and I think it's pretty simple when you can kind of look at it from that lens. There's over 50 million Americans who now hold some form of cryptocurrency and do not want their wealth stolen. What's interesting on this kind of on the landscape is we've seen a clear progression the last few years where the Democrats have been the anti-crypto party, at least for the last 4+ years. And the Republicans have kind of become the pro-crypto party, like unintentionally, just because they haven't been the anti-crypto party. And so it's been interesting to watch that progress the last 4 years as an adult. And recently, the Democrats have changed their tune hardcore, like I mentioned. Literally overnight, Biden is now accepting crypto donations to his campaign within hours of Trump doing that, doing it on his, and then announcing that he somehow likes crypto when he's literally never made that statement before. So my prediction in regards to the election piece is that this election, November 2024, may very well give us a prolonged crypto cycle that would run well into 2025. Rather than some of my initial base case theories that I was entertaining in 2023, which were more so indicating we might peak in 2024. I don't have time to get into the full, depth of market cycles and my whole theory around that. My students will be familiar with that. But essentially, this aligns very well with the business and liquidity cycle, which I've talked about before publicly. I don't know if I've talked about it on this show, but that's just a fancy way of looking at when are they injecting money into the economy and when are they pulling money out of the economy? Like when are they expanding the money supply and when are they contracting the money supply? And that gives us another degree of confidence in this thesis. I think this is important to note because it's going to be easier for all of you watching this to build wealth through crypto if we see a prolonged cycle. The more difficult cycle will be if we just pretty soon here go vertical and we just don't really look back, and then we pull back and the recession starts and catches a lot of people off guard. That's absolutely a possibility. I'm weighting that around 30 to 40% likelihood. Whereas I'm currently at this moment in time, and it's constantly changing as I'm exposed to new information and time passes. But I'm currently, I'd say, around 60 to 70% more leaning towards it being likelier that we see a longer cycle. The more we chop around at these levels, the better it actually is. I know a lot of you are impatient and you're probably wanting things to just go straight up, but you actually want things to take time, chop around. We're seeing, ETH ETFs passed. We want to see the FIT 21 bill passed. We want to see more politicians talking about these things. We want to see, Biden coming out and actually, for the first time starting to put his money where his mouth is and actually pass something regarding that, or at least not disparage cryptocurrency. And that is going to be the tide change that we need to see, where it becomes a bipartisan agreement. And that's really like one of the last nails in the coffin. Like I said, the first one was Bitcoin ETF. Then you have things like the merchant processors adopting it that we went over. That handles more of like the consumer economy, institutional adoption. Then we have the Ethereum ETFs. Once we get legislation passed with the FIT 21, and then the only thing remaining from that is like, do we see starting to see more ETFs in the crypto space in the realm of like industries or buckets? And so that's what I'm going to talk about next for my second prediction, which is, okay, so Bitcoin ETF, we saw that pass on January 10th. Ethereum ETF, we saw that passed on May 23rd. We're still waiting on what's called the S1 to pass, which would allow it to actually be bought and traded on the public equities markets. So we're still waiting on that legislature. Could happen before this video comes out. Could happen in a month. Who knows? I don't anticipate it taking long because, once again, whether you're talking about the House, the Senate, or the president, these people are up for election. At least a lot of them are up for election this year. That's a factor here. Next, for my final prediction here, I think that we're going to start to see other layer 1 and basket ETFs. And I'll explain a little bit about what that means. Solana is a good example, but there's a lot of layer 1s, Phantom, Avalanche, etc. So I have been teaching my students in the Level Up Collective since 2021 that the future of the blockchain is a multi-chain world. If you don't know what that means, think about credit card companies. Imagine 200 years ago, before there were credit card companies, right? And this invention of a credit card comes out. It wouldn't be too hard to imagine that the newspaper or the print at the time, because that's what we had, right, would have been sitting there saying that there was going to be this one credit card and that's it. And that's what the future of humanity would be using, right? And then you would have pushback of like, no, we shouldn't have a bunch of credit. We shouldn't have competitive and all that. And that's the nature of humanity and how we resist innovation, but then we ultimately adopt it. We've been seeing that with the nature of like, okay, just a Bitcoin ETF. No, not an Ethereum ETF, not other ETFs, but then eventually it comes around. We also see that going on with like AI, for example. Like people are cool with it in one regard, but then they're like, oh, it's going to be the downfall of humanity. But then eventually we adopt it. And human nature repeats. Mm-hmm. So my point with this credit card analogy is the future is going to look like a multi-chain world, which means that there are going to be many options of what you might be able to use in terms of cryptocurrency. It's been pretty obvious to me for many years now that the future was never going to revolve around a single crypto or a single digital asset such as Bitcoin, but many crypto assets. So when I say multi-chain, that's referring to multi-blockchain. Just like, the credit card and even like thinking of banks, like imagine if there was only one banking option. That doesn't make sense. One credit card option. That doesn't make sense. So this is just a natural progression to a new kind of barter economy. So my thoughts are, as we head towards the election, I think that the pressure the political parties are going to feel to vote and pass issues that the majority of America wants goes way up. This is just basic game theory. They have to entertain the masses. That's who's going to vote them in, apparently. No other year would this happen in such record speed, but I believe we're going to soon see layer 1 crypto ETFs. Layer 1 is a category of cryptocurrency, maybe in a basket like a stock ETF or maybe singular. But I do think in the more midterm, either way, we're going to start seeing categorized crypto ETFs. So picture this, Aaron, like there's all sorts of subcategories in crypto, right? There's like privacy coins. There's layer 1s. There's layer 2s. There's real world assets. There's AI coins. There's gaming coins. There's all sorts of different categories that I just named. And in all of those categories, those are what's called altcoins. Well, imagine being able to buy a crypto AI ETF. You just buy this one ticker and you can invest into it from your 401k, from your Social Security, pension, retirement, whatever, right? The institutional systems plug into it. And so you just buy this one ticker, just like an ETF, but the crypto fund holds 25 crypto altcoins. And so you're getting exposure just like buying the S&P, just like buying the NASDAQ or QQQ or whatever, right? Those are ETFs where it's holding a basket of stocks. This is the transition from Web 2.0 to Web 3.0. It only makes sense that this is going to come down the pipeline, I think, a lot sooner than people are aware, where there's going to be ETF providers that hold 10 to 50 assets. There's no magic number inside an ETF, just like a hedge fund would. And you don't have to worry about picking them. You don't have to worry about rebalancing them. You don't have to worry about all the things that you have to worry about if you're a sophisticated investor. You just buy this one ticker and you get exposure now to an entire sub-asset class of cryptocurrency. Now, why is this important? Last episode, I talked about Moore's Law and the chart of like network adoption and all that, if you remember that, Aaron. This is where mainstream adoption and network effects are going to take over. And we're going to start to see a Web 2.0 boom level of adoption if and when these things take place. Price action is going to follow adoption growth in the mid to long term. In the short term, it can, of course, doesn't need to follow it. It can fall off a cliff and it can get way over exaggerated, but it will always revert back to the mean, meaning the average. Mm-hmm. I've had a lot of people doubt me in sharing my thesis on a multi-chain world. It's kind of like religion, Aaron. Similar to how you're talking about the Essenes, and you come from a religious background and you have a lot of following that's like a good amount of following that is religious or Christian, right? And so your teachings are threatening their worldview. Well, similar to me, I teach on finance, but I do so in a similar way to you, where it's maybe unorthodox or alternative and innovative. I would consider you a spiritual innovator, and I'm a financial innovator. And so the things that I'm saying threaten the existing structures of how things have been done and thought of. And so if you're holding a shitload of stocks, or you're an options investor, or commodities, or Forex, or you're a Bitcoin maxi, and of course you're going to be like, oh, that's never going to happen, because I'm threatening your worldview. But so far, every single thing that I have said in regards to crypto predictions has played out. So my thing about why I like investing is like, you could just look at the scoreboard. You know what I mean? So I say that to say, there's been a lot of doubts of whether the SEC would ever pass a Bitcoin ETF, let alone pass an Ethereum ETF, let alone literally redefining what a decentralized technology is and isn't. And then them changing the rules on Ethereum and other decentralized assets. To me, that's the literal nail in the coffin. If you're still sitting here like, I need proof, or like anything like that, like I don't really know what to say. My macro thesis has been for the last few years around the fourth turning. I've been very vocal and proponent about that. I have free resources on it. I've done podcasts on it. I talk about it constantly in this series. I teach my students on it. I've posted about the book. I've done all sorts of things around the fourth turning. And disruptive innovation is just so happens to be the key vehicle that is helping usher in this fourth turning. In the past, it was for other reasons. Maybe it was political. Maybe it was social. Maybe it was religious. Maybe it was geographical or land-based. But this 2024 to 2034, wherever we're at, this fourth turning, it so happens to be that disruptive innovation is playing a massive role in expediting and ushering in the end of the fourth turning and into the new first turning. It's toppling political systems as we know it. It's toppling news and media as we know it. It's changing the landscape of our societal belief systems and culture.
Financial systems.
It's changing the financial systems, the labor, the education system. It will change the medical system. I mean, there is no system that is safe. And that's a beautiful thing, because these systems need reform, and they need to be they don't even need reform. They need to be burnt to the ground and rebuilt. They need to be reimagined. They can't be looked at from the same level of consciousness that created them, as Albert Einstein would say. And so these technologies, this innovation, why I'm so passionate about it isn't because I'm some transhumanist. I'm not a fan of Neuralink. I'm not going to be ever on board with that. I'm not driving an EV. It's not about any of that. It's just that I'm exuberant to be on Earth during this fourth turning and to be ushering in the new Earth and playing a small role in that, as are you on the front lines. And innovation is playing a massive role in the wealth transfer that's going on right now. What we've been talking about, some of the predictions that I've been giving in terms of crypto and all that have played out almost to a T. And I want to clarify for, everyone who's still listening to this episode today. I could not be more confident that this is it. This is that moment that decades from now, we're going to tell stories about.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like it was not far off in 2020. I felt like it was a bit closer in 2022. The pendulum has swung so heavily in the last 12 months that, as we were talking about earlier, it has exceeded anything that I was researching or timelines I was placing. And take this how you will, but the cat is fully out of the bag, if you're asking me. I think this election is going to bring crypto into full-blown mainstream awareness, which we've never had before. And I want you to understand that this isn't the same thing as a stock. This isn't the same thing as metals. This isn't the same thing as bonds. We've never had an asset class that has a finite supply. It cannot be corrupted. And so when you have that shift to mainstream adoption, you don't have the same supply demand dynamics. And once you have X amount of hundreds of millions of people that now own this asset, we don't really have the math for where that asset is going to be valued at. And I can assure you the FOMO that you're going to feel if you know that ideologically you stand for everything that we're talking about and that you believe in what we're saying, but ... insert blank. And for some reason you fumble the bag. That is what I'm trying to prevent. So to kind of wrap up, I'm extremely excited. I think that every month, especially the last 6, things are accelerating and the pendulum is shifting, and it's not shifting in a way where it's like how it was in 2020, where it's like, how much worse can things get? It's just a clown show. Like we're living in the Truman Show. Like, what is going on? It's getting worse and worse. And it's like, what? It is shifting the other way at an accelerated rate. And I think we're having the perfect storm for, I almost just want to be like, just wait and see, but I also want to be able to clip this in the future. All I'm saying, guys, is I'm not one of those people that blows smoke up people's asses. And I also really value my reputation. And I don't think we're going to get another opportunity like this for at least many, many, many decades. Maybe in our lifetime, but at least many, many decades. So that's where we're at with things. Literally between one show and the next show, Aaron, like so much stuff happens that
it's crazy.
It's kind of baffling, and it's been cool to. That's one thing for me that it's been cool to do this show, just because of it allows us both to like reflect on what has gone on, and then to kind of prepare how we feel about it and our thoughts and everything like that. And it's I'm just like incredibly grateful. I mean, I've taken a lot of L's in my life. I've had to go through a long journey to become who I needed to be to kind of like do this work. And this feels like beyond the harvest I could have ever fathomed for, and I'm not just speaking financially, it's the meaning comes from the fact of how many people I've helped position to change their lives off of this. And I very much so see you in like almost the same arc of like your career right now, like where you're taking off with the podcasts that you're getting on and the recognition that you're getting. And it's like, people didn't see the 10 years that you've put in behind the scenes. They don't understand how hard you've worked and all of the reading and the practices and the study and the devotion behind closed doors. They're just like, wow, he's a natural. And it's like, no, you're not. you put in the work for this moment. So when people see you on Know Thyself or soon Joe Rogan, wink, wink, it's like, wow, he's so good. And it's like, no, you put in the fucking work.
Oh man, if people only knew, dude.
To have that moment, that one moment, so that when you have your moment, you don't squander it. That's what I feel like this is kind of the financial version of that for me, because I've been working on this thesis for 4 years. And like, it's hard because like people that come and go from my work, like students that joined or people that used to tap in, but then like shift away, like they weren't patient enough for it to play out, but the thesis wasn't wrong. And so I'm always coming back to like Noah's Ark. Like I've been building this ark for a long time, and it's finally here. And it feels really fucking good, because you have to have like ridiculous faith when the world's like, you're crazy, for a long time, you know? And I know you can relate to that because, you know, you're teaching things that in the same way challenge people's beliefs. And it took time for you to become who you are today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the universe always vindicates you in the end when you stay true to yourself, you speak your truth, you trust, you surrender, and you just stay the path, stay the course, be patient. You get vindicated in the long run for those virtues because you stay on that straight and narrow path that will lead you to the truth. And yeah, you've been ringing this bell for a long time. And now people are finally starting to see that, you know, you have a gift in this area for understanding how money works, how economies work. And like, that's such a huge service to humanity to have people like yourself who are really working for the light side, that are trying to educate the masses of like, look, all this money, this economy is being weaponized for pure evil and selfishness. Let's use it for the kingdom of God and to create a planet we all want to live on. It's a very rare but needed form of dharma on this planet. So I'm grateful that you're doing that work. I'm grateful to play a small part in that work myself and just like waking people up, educating them. But especially grateful for this show and all it allows for us to do and raising collective awareness. And when you said, one of the last things you said sparked the idea of, I can't wait for December when we do the year-end review episode and we get to kind of like go back and chronologue all the biggest events of this year and say like, look at this 1 year span of time and look how far we came in these 12 months. Like in January, people were saying there's no way Bitcoin will ever be adopted as an ETF. And then now we've got 3 different coins that have ETFs. Nobody saw that coming. You know, when you can review a solid chunk of time and see all the progression, it's really encouraging for people of like, damn, this planet really is waking up quick. And there's a lot to be grateful for and a lot to be optimistic about.
Yeah, that's going to be powerful. That's a great idea.
We'll definitely do that.
We're going to put some epic recaps together for you guys in December. That'll be a fun project.
Yeah, man.
All right. Beautiful, guys. Well, if you're still with us, thank you so much for tuning in today. We appreciate you. As always, let us know in the comments what most resonated. And if there's any specific topics you want us to get into in the future, let us know. We'll check out the comments. Outside of that, we wish you peace and love, and we'll see you next month, guys.
Peace and love.